Welcome to the Smark Foundation podcast. I am Aaron. This is Adam.
Hello, all. Happy wrestling.
And we are here with your weekly coverage of the WWE and AEW Big Four, as well as a Call It in the Ring segment and our lovely little intro as we're doing here. Adam, you want to run down the socials for him?
All right. The majority of our posting and our social media presence is, discussed last week, going to be on Blue Sky from here on out. We'll still keep our handles on Twitter, that hellscape, but we won't. God knows we don't need us deactivating those accounts and have some troll taking over. But for the most part, if you want to find us, you can find us on Blue Sky. This podcast official handle is at SMARK FNDN podcast.bsky.social. Aaron's is aaronsmark.bsky.social. Mine is Adam Smark FNDN pod.bsky.social. It's long and complicated. I'm sorry. You can slow down this feed if you want to get that again, but that is where you can find us. We are terminally online. If you have any questions or things that you'd like to suggest we talk about, or things that you just want us to discuss as they happen, even if we may not be live tweeting as we watch, we're usually watching the shows as they're happening, at least maybe offset by as much as an hour, but we're there. Get a hold of us. We would love to engage a little bit more with our followers. That would be a really nice goal that we could live up to, because honestly, it's not really been there as much as I would have hoped. That's not on you guys, for the record. I'm not blaming anybody. That's not what we do here. We don't blame our fans for anything. They've got families and they've got precious time. But we would admittedly like to interact a little bit more. Feel free to hit us up. Our DMs are open if you want it not to be public too. So please do so. We would love to engage and possibly, all things on the table, possibly mine you guys for ideas for the Call in the Ring segment on occasion.
For sure. But yeah, that's our social. Make sure you catch us at Linktree at Smark Foundation Podcast, and that will give you all of our links to our store and our other podcast platforms like Spotify and the RSS feed and everything like that. It'll also take you directly to any of our Blue Sky feeds if you want to access them there. And other than that, I think maybe a big shout out to our new Blue Sky followers. Anybody who's followed us in the last week or two and is joining us now, thanks for being here. We really appreciate having you. And to our regular followers week to week and the new ones we've added recently, thank you as well for being here.
Yes, and for our continued Finnish fan, whoever you may be, Kiitos for following us. I learned a word for y'all. Tell your friends. So yeah, I mean, wrestling this week I thought was overall pretty good. I was very happy with most of the content that we got, at least on the AEW side. I know that we were talking before we started recording about how you really liked NXT this week, which you don't normally watch.
Yeah, I really did enjoy NXT this week. A lot of representation from the women's division. They go really hard over there. The men were really impressive too. That's not to discount them at all. But I feel like as far as everything I watched this week, which was both companies and 5 different shows, that I think NXT
That's a lot of time to give up, by the way.
Oh yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, I pretty much enjoyed everything I watched this week, so I wasn't, I didn't feel like I was put out by any of it. So
isn't it nice when the time you put in actually pays you back?
Yeah, when you feel rewarded for giving it the time, yeah.
Could you imagine if we were doing just a straight up WWE podcast in like 2018? Like how much of a drag that would be. Like it just, I can't even. I'm so glad that we're in a new wrestling boom period. Not just for the fact that you know, it's allowing us to do this podcast, but it's also because holy cow, wrestling on all sides is good. Like if you're a fan of professional wrestling, you are being fed well.
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely a great time to be a fan. I mean, whether you're a fan of, Mexican wrestling or Japanese wrestling or American wrestling, Canada's really gaining a huge foothold. They've got a ton of their own promotions now, a ton of big ones. Where we're not before Stampede was kind of what people knew long and short on the American side of Canadian wrestling. Now, I mean, we're talking about WWID prospects from Canada and tons of indies there. You got the Brit Rest scene. I really think, regardless of what country you're in, if wrestling's hot, wrestling's hot. But also, if you're in this day and age, if you're a digital wrestling fan like us, like we
Yeah.
are, and most of the people that probably follow this podcast, and most of the people that are probably wrestling fans in general these days, because wrestling fans have a tendency to. I mean, I remember, you know, back in the days when you had, when you pirated DVDs and stuff like that, that
Mhm.
there was a whole scene of guys who were making DVDs. And I think there's still a couple of them around, like IVP or some of those guys
Well, with
where,
the most hardcore fans, I mean, it goes way back further than that. I mean, the reason that the ECW audience was as knowledgeable as they were was because most of them were those hardcore tape traders.
yeah,
Like if
but
you, oof, VCR days,
yeah, but wrestling
talking about
fans have a
dating us
history.
here.
I mean, I remember back in the tape trader days, like I could get like Noah or NJPW or like
Mhm.
War or something like that, or the deathmatch stuff.
Yeah.
But that was about it. Now they're,
Well, that was
at,
what was very, very different to what you were finding here. You're always going to
yeah.
find what what has the most interest in an environment like that is what you cannot get at home. You
Hmm.
couldn't get the stuff they were doing in Wrestle and Romance here. You couldn't get frontier martial arts wrestling deathmatch style here.
Oh,
Not
no,
even
hell
in
no.
ECW for the most part,
Yeah.
really.
The stuff they did, even at the worst, the stuff they did was tame compared to FMW's.
And even tamer. Like if you were really that hardcore in the late 80s and early 90s, where else were you going to get a hold of Joshi? Actual incredible, way ahead of its time, uh, just innovative women's wrestling that shaped the entire industry into what it is today and doesn't get the credit for
Mm.
it.
Yeah, I mean, wrestling fans have always had a way of sniffing out everything out there for us, and so now in the digital age, it's just so much easier. But there's so much more. Like it's provided, places with an audience that it may not have had before. There are companies that subside off of, their pay-per-view sales because they have an audience that cannot be in their building, every couple of months or so for a pay-per-view. So they're watching, they're paying $5 on YouTube or IPPV or whatever it is that they're watching it on.
Yeah.
And these companies are thriving because of that. They're able to book much bigger talent than they would if, just off of their local crowds. So, I mean, yeah, wrestling's a hot thing right now. I still don't think we're at like 99, 2000 level yet.
I mean,
But
that's the difference of popularity versus profitability. In
yeah.
profitability terms, it is no contest. It
Oh,
is
no, no
far more
contest.
profitable now.
But that's because they're
But in
able to
terms,
command things. They know
yeah,
like, hey, this is the kind of crowd we can bring into a place. And so this is the kind
this
of
is the
money
Saudi
we can
blood money we can
command.
bring in.
Yeah, well, I mean, on one side, yeah. But I mean,
But
we could talk about Jacksonville blood money too,
it's
because
true.
God forbid
Spade's a spade. Yeah.
God forbid I buy an AEW title to make sure that the Jaguars get to stay open for another year.
Oof.
Now I'm a
Their
Texans
title
fan, so
belts
I
are
don't want to do that.
so. Their title belts are
Expensive.
so. The replica belts are so overpriced too.
Oh God,
Like
they
they
are.
look gorgeous, but like I don't want to be paying like $500 for that. Get out of here. No way.
Yeah, if they weren't
No way.
5, 6, $700 for a really good replica title belt, having held so many actual like custom made title belts in my hand,
Right.
um, if they weren't 5, 6, $700, I'd probably have a shelf right behind me, with a bunch of them
Yeah.
on it. But they're $700. It's like I could buy a title belt that I will literally never do anything with, but put on, like, I'll put it on
You can have
once.
it custom made to your own specifications and designs for less than
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
these AEW
yeah.
replica belts.
I'm doing a custom belt for my fantasy football league for next year.
Yeah.
Because my brother was in the league and he passed away. And
Mm.
so I'm making a memorial title for him that's going to be a real deal, like custom handmade, hand tooled wrestling title belt because that's what we have now. We just have one of those crappy, like, generic fantasy football league champion
Yeah.
belts. But I'm gonna make like a real deal, like tooled and tarried freaking wrestling belt for
Yeah.
this league. It's going to cost me about $400, and
Yeah.
it's not going to be crusted in diamonds and gold, but it's going to be beautiful. And I don't understand why AEW or WWE couldn't some, but maybe, I don't know, maybe they're paying comparatively that price that I'm having to pay to produce these things. And then
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure they're not. I'm sure they're done them by the thousands or hundreds of thousands. So they're probably paying $100 a head for them, or something
Yeah.
like that. But, and then they're charging us a ridiculous amount. This is why I don't buy a lot of wrestling merch. Like, I buy them from indie guys, but indie guys really know their audience. They know what you want, or they
Yeah.
know their audience, whether you want it or not. Like this one indie guy. So the last show I went to, there was two guys at a table right next to each other. And they're two guys I'm familiar with, but I hadn't caught up with their merch game in a while, you know?
Yeah.
So I go over to the merch tables and I'm kind of looking around as I do. Most of the time I go, I'll have like a 20 in my hand so I can pick up a t-shirt or something like that. But a lot of times, being a referee and having worked in the business, a lot of those guys will be like, man, you'd look really good in a 2X one of mine. And I'm like, all right. And they'll just give it to me. And so I'll put it on right there. Like, hey, check out these awesome
Yeah.
shirts. It's so comfy, like I'll just be
Yeah.
spamming people saying that shit. So maybe they'll get a couple more, but
Yeah.
I go to one guy and he's a guy I've known this guy. He was at my very first training session and I've known him the entire time I've been in the business. He's got grinders and trays and lighters with his picture on them. And I'm like, okay, this guy's got a little weed kit for wrestling fan. This guy knows his audience, at least half of it. At least half of it, you know. But then I go to the next guy who's right next to him on the other half of the table. And he's got soap and deodorant with his logo on it. And I'm like, know your fucking audience.
Yeah. That's kind of a backhanded way of
He's a
doing it,
heel, to be fair.
but
He's a
I
heel.
mean,
So it makes sense.
I've been to plenty of indie shows, which we'll talk about later. Actually, there's a preview for Call in the Ring. Uh,
See me
but
doing that thing that comedians do where
yeah,
they loop
yeah,
shit around.
yeah, that's what we're doing. Uh, but yeah, it's uh, that is something that is true, and because it is true, it's become kind of a running joke online. Like, guys, let me make a personal plea to everybody.
Oh man.
Even if you don't think that your hygiene standards are poor, even if they're not actually poor, before you go to a wrestling event, please take a shower, put on deodorant. If you brush your teeth, um, even if you plan to drink beer, I know beer and minty toothpaste doesn't exactly go well together, but please do it. Um, wear clean clothes. Uh, everybody's gonna sweat. Usually these venues are little sweat boxes. It's gonna happen. There is a point to which we will forgive you, but good heavens, come in there as fresh and clean as you can, please. Like, if you need any more, if you need any more inspiration, you never know. Trust me when I say you never know when you're gonna meet your future partner. Like, you never know that. Come summertime fresh, please, please.
Yes.
Not just for everybody else's sake, although yes, for everyone else's sake, but for your sake,
For yours.
because you only stand to benefit. and everybody else will like you so much more if you do. So for your friend, Aaron, your heel friend with the bars of soap, that's not a heel. That's a friend giving you tough love.
Dude, his merch game is always on point, but this is the first time I've ever seen anybody selling deodorant and soap.
Dude, that's an absolute killer idea that every freaking independent wrestler should steal from him
Oh, they
shamelessly.
should say, and guys, AK47.clothing.co for all your merch needs. Just shameless plug on my own business there. Mm. So
But
yeah, I mean, his merch game is on point, but you know what? I agree with Adam 100%, and I'm not going to elaborate any further because I will actually elaborate on that very point during our Call It in the Ring segment because we were going to be talking about some indie wrestling stuff, and there is a very specific show I'm going to talk about in my list that will touch on this very subject for a very terrible reason. So, um, but trust me, it's entertaining. I'm not going to be knocking anybody. I'm just going to let y'all
yeah.
know that I was also one of those people because we all in this venue were one of those people. So yeah,
Fair enough.
we'll get there.
Fair
So
enough.
yeah. Anyway, yeah, that. Oh God, man, yeah, the merge game with this guy was on point. But I think we've gone through our little,
Yep. Ring
hits for the
introductions
week.
are over.
The ring
Ring
introductions are over.
introductions are over.
So
And
let's
it's
time
time
to lock
to
it up.
lock up.
Yes. All right. So lock it up with Raw this week. Um, man. Okay. So I'm gonna say and preface all of this right now with I thought Raw was really good this week. Um, I guess what I could say is that maybe it wasn't as good as last week was such a banger, man. It's going to
Mm,
be hard to live up to that standard week by week. I understand that as a wrestling
yeah.
fan, and I've seen it firsthand. It's really hard to get hot and stay as hot as you are at the hottest point. It's almost impossible to stay
That
there
goes for
static.
literally anything in life
Literally
that you
every
are
company.
doing over a long period of time.
Yeah.
It's to be
So
expected.
so we start off with a Gunther promo, and he comes out and he's talking, and then he gets interrupted by Damian Priest. This is going to be a big like. Okay, first of all, Damian Priest and Gunther have a killer dynamic between one another. I think it might be because when you stand them face to face, Damian
They're
Priest
so
is
different.
he is either about the same height as Gunther or just a little bit shorter, and actually bigger than Gunther is. He's just built bigger than Gunther.
He's got those wide
Yeah,
shoulders. Yeah.
Gunther does not tower over him or look intimidating in his presence in any way. So
Yeah.
that makes it a very good like equal standpoint that we come from to begin with. But now Gunther's taken, he is the world champion, but we just come off Crown Jewel. He's taken that L to Cody clean,
Mm-hmm.
and now Damian Priest has something to work with. And my God, I know we don't talk about it very often with people in the main event scene maximizing their minutes,
Yeah.
but my boy Damian Priest maximized his fucking minutes, man.
Yeah.
This promo where he did about Gunther losing his aura because Gunther took that clean L to Cody and Damian was not shy about bringing it up and saying you've lost your aura, you're not that guy you used to be. And he's like, you've conquered it and now you're coasting and you've kind of lost some of your confidence because you took that L to Cody and we, I can see you struggling with yourself inside and I'm gonna beat you for that title. Basically
yeah.
at Survivor Series because I that's what's happening. It's gonna be him and Damien at Survivor Series. I'm 100% behind it. I'm not upset about it at all. There are other people I would like to see fight for the world heavyweight title. I was really expecting a CM Punk appearance tonight. Spoiler for the rest of my review. He does not show up. CM Punk did not show up. I was I am not the only person. I know a lot of other people, especially in my social media circles, were expecting CM Punk shows up tonight post Saudi shows
Yeah.
and he calls out Gunther and that's our next, that's our Survivor Series um program. And we thought that mostly because before Punk went away, from because he tried to cut off Drew McIntyre at match 2, and he called out Gunther, and Drew came
Mhm.
back and was like, no, 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 we're doing 3, and here's Hell in a Cell, you know. So he already had called out Gunther, so he thought, okay, he's going to come back post Crown Jewel, he's going to call out Gunther. That's our program. That's not how it's going. I don't know if CM Punk fits into this. Now, I'm not saying he couldn't just easily come back and slot himself in somewhere. He could. It'd be pretty shitty with 3 weeks of booking. I think he understands that better than almost anybody. So he probably won't insert himself here. There's only 4 weeks to go to Survivor Series. WWE has been telling a lot of these stories for a while already. A lot of the stuff going into Survivor Series, I'm really hoping for some blow-offs. Some of these stories have been going on for a while. Gunther and Damian Priest is a revisit because Gunther
Mm.
won the title from Damian
And
Priest.
Priest never got a rematch.
And
Yeah.
Priest never got his rematch. Yeah. So this is kind of a revisit. I mean, yes, we're coming to a logical conclusion of said story, despite there being tons of crap in between where they just weren't talking to each other or dealing with each other at all. Um, so this is, it's logical, but there's a lot of big stories I think that are getting blow offs at Survivor Series that Punk just isn't part of any of these that are long term being told. Like, unless they drug him and Drew back on TV right now and we're like, hey, we're going to do 4, which I don't think they're going to do. I don't think they should. Please don't. I know you hear me. Please do not. But unless they did that, there's no place for either of
they
them right
they can
now.
always like revisit a little bit of the magic in the Royal Rumble match.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of what it's for. Like you can have them stare down and beat the crap out of each other for 2 minutes and have one eliminate the other if
Mm-hmm.
you want. Probably Punk eliminating Drew, if we're
I
being
would imagine
honest,
that's how it goes. Yeah.
because
Um,
if you go the other way, then it continues.
yeah.
If the
Yeah. Punk.
heel if the heel does that to the baby face, the baby face has to win, right? So like
Punk wouldn't let it
but
go.
that's
We know that from
that,
his character. He
of
just
course
wouldn't
not.
let it go.
Of course not.
He'd be
No.
worse than the
How could
bracelet.
he? No. But
Um,
I
so,
I did hear a theory
hmm,
that led me to think maybe they're piling up Survivor Series, a lot of blowups at Survivor Series because they want to make that first Raw on Netflix super duper huge and special. The theory that I heard was maybe they're saving Punk's return, or at least in ring return, for after Survivor Series to lead to a match with Gunther for the belt on that show.
I would be okay with that. My prediction was actually because the Netflix thing never really comes to the forefront of my mind. Like, I know that they're going to Netflix in January, and I know
Yeah.
that I'm easily going to switch over because I already have a Netflix subscription.
Right.
Um, I'm going to save any judgment I have about Netflix as far as how that's going to work until Christmas Day when my Houston Texans play the Baltimore Ravens live on Netflix and see if it's near as bad as that freaking Tyson fight thing.
I
Dude,
heard
I have
so much
had
bad crap about that.
I
Holy
have
cow.
had I have had illegal streams of UFC fights work better than the paid for Netflix stream for Tyson Paul. It was so bad, dude. Like, I'll put it this way, I'm going to cop to it. I'll cop to it right now. I watched an illegal stream of a UFC show because I will not support a company financially that supports Mango Mussolini. And I just turned it on to watch the John Jones fight. And the stream worked beautifully and perfectly the entire time I was watching it.
Man.
And I cannot say that. I did not get to watch the Mike Tyson Jake Paul fight on Netflix until an hour after it was over. And I only know it was over because my son came in and said I had the fight spoiled for me. And I said, don't tell me what it is. Just go back to your room. I'm pissed off at Netflix right now. And then finally got Netflix to work. It was about an hour after the fight had ended. I finally got to watch it. And I want my hour and a half back. Although the women's fight for the title and the men's fight for the title before Paul and Tyson were bangers. They were bangers. I know we don't
I
do boxing here, but
heard,
holy crap, they were awesome,
like,
man.
I generally don't really give a crap about boxing, but I heard, I mean, anybody can appreciate a good fight,
Mm-hmm.
even if they don't know the nuances or whatever. And from everything that I heard about that women's fight, except that everybody
except the headbutt.
wasn't well, everybody was annoyed about the finish because apparently everybody thought the other lady should have won.
Yeah, yeah, the
But
other lady should have won because the lady who won was headbutting the shit out of her the entire time, and she
yeah,
busted her open with her head. She didn't even punch her open,
so
and that,
that's like I saw the eyebrow, the
yeah,
gash over her eyebrow
the lady who lost
online.
was a predator, dude. She basically followed this lady around the ring and dealt her punishment at every turn to the point where this lady decided, okay, now we're going to fight up close. And every time they
Yeah,
got close enough, she headbutted her. And I mean, a couple of times it wasn't intentional, but that last one that busted her open was definitely intentional.
you don't get an accidental 4-inch gash. Like you just
Yeah.
don't.
They were also fighting Orthodox versus Southpaw. So they're shoulder to
Okay,
shoulder this way.
right.
Oh, man, they were head to head close anyway. But yeah,
Yeah, I heard
they got
nothing but
down.
great things about the quality of that fight,
But
though.
anyway, yeah.
Like,
So I'm waiting to see like if I'm gonna be excited about Raw being on Netflix to see if they fix things for the football games that are coming up.
yeah,
Because those will be kind of a middle ground. The football games will probably get about as many viewers on Netflix as Raw will, so that'll be a good comparison. That fight
they
is
will probably get
got way
more, I
more.
would think.
That
But
fight got way more viewers than anything else on Netflix is going to
yeah, it
get.
was
And
like
the only
53 million users or something, like
yeah,
some ludicrous number.
but the only
You
thing
know,
they had really streamed live before that was a Cat Williams comedy special, which I watched live, but
yeah,
it worked fine.
yeah,
But it definitely didn't have
that
near
doesn't
as
stand up
many.
to
Yeah, no, no.
the
He's kind
drawing
of
power of Mike Tyson and the desire of all of America to see Jake Logan get his face pounded in.
which I think
Unfortunately,
I'm just
didn't
gonna have to
happen. Yeah.
rewatch the Tommy Fury fight over and over again to get that. Anyway, back to Raw. So um Priest versus Gunther, huge up. I'm ready for this bout. That was Damian Priest's best uh that's his best promo in this
I'm
whole thing.
so I'm so glad for him. I remember seeing him for the first time on a Ring of Honor show that we pay-per-view that we streamed as Punishment Martinez, and he was so skinny back then, but he
Mm-hmm.
was doing like all this stuff. He's a 6'7" guy, like doing tope con hilo over the top rope. Not even touching the rope. Like who is
Mm-hmm.
this guy? Like I was so glad when he signed with WWE because like this is gonna be a guy, and he's exceeded all of my expectations. So
Right.
good for him.
Next big thing I liked, Damage Control had a trios match against Pure Fusion Collective because it was a trios match because Dakota Kai is back from injury.
Terrible name. Hate
Um,
that name so
I was
much.
just about to say that down. I still hate the name Pure Fusion Collective. But I like the stable. I mean, they're all three. They have this like MMA air of like legitimacy to them. So I think it
Yeah,
really helps when somebody beats them. It doesn't happen very often. They usually run roughshod over everybody. Pure Fusion they went down. Damage Control took the win in this. Of course, because Dakota Kai is returned.
yeah,
Happy to see her back as always. She
yeah. I
is
like
one of the
Dakota.
few people that like from before I started watching for the podcast that I am familiar with because I was kind of watching when Damage Control was a thing. Always good to see Dakota Kai back. Um, let's see what else here. I'm just kind of going through my notes. Kofi Kingston versus Pete Dunne up as a match, but mostly just a vehicle to kind of further the tension between the New Day. They're getting to the point now where it is obvious that this is going to happen at the 10th anniversary thing. They're
Yeah,
telegraphing it so hard. I
yeah.
don't know if they're. I kind of hope they swerve me somehow still, but I mean, it's getting to the point where like Xavier's being such a dick on TV that I'm like, quit being a dick, dude. Like, stop. Like, even I know he's just playing a character because he's a super nice dude. I interact with him all the
Yeah,
time on like Twitter and Blue Sky and stuff like that, and he's like so nice and
yeah.
so
He's a
interactive and
great
like
guy.
cool dude. But on TV, he is being such a dick that I'm just like, God, stop being a dick. So we're getting to that point where like I was already kind of like, can y'all pull the trigger on this? I'm giving them the over until the 10th anniversary show, but I'm pretty sure that's going to be it, man. Like,
I
so,
really, I hope they swerve us
um,
by having secretly cleared Big E to return. That's what I'm hoping for. I'm. It may be hope against hope, but man, like, what a raw deal Big E got. Like, I
mm,
really hope that it's on their 10th anniversary that they. I hope it's a happy ending and not like, you know, let,
Yeah.
let me put it this way. I hope it's like Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose winning the tag belts right after Roman Reigns tells everybody he has to vacate the Universal title because his leukemia came back. Right after the belt, not 5 minutes later, right after the belt. I hope it stays in that moment.
Right.
Hope it stays in that moment and doesn't we don't swerve further down the line there. I would very much like that feel good moment for Big E, who has had a very, very rough couple of years between the injury, between losing Brody Lee. Like I feel like I feel like he deserves a win in life. And I
Mhm.
really, really hope that this is an opportunity to give him that win. Like, I mean, obviously, if he's been cleared, he knows already. But like,
Yeah.
to say that and let people know in that public way is so important in this business.
Yeah.
For not just for the business, but for the people in it.
Yeah.
So I hope that's what happens. But if it's not going to happen, then I guess the second best thing is to solidify a heel turn by freaking beating up the guy who's got a broken neck.
Yeah, I guess.
There's no better heel heat than that. It
Yeah.
sucks. I hate that that's the other option, but I mean, Bubba Ray will be happy
See, after that, we had a Bronson Reed promo. He just came out and called out Seth Rollins, basically, and then they brawled because I guess we're
again.
still doing this. They had, by all accounts, a good match at Crown Jewel, so I don't know what's going on there. But it looks like they're still brawling. They could still actually be brawling, for all I know. Um,
And didn't they have the whole episode of Raw to brawl the other day, a
last
few
week,
weeks
yeah.
ago?
Yeah,
Like,
that was one of the best episodes of Raw. They were just kicking each other's ass all episode. So I mean, I'm not
it's
against
like,
it. I just
dude,
I'm
get it out
still
of your system,
yeah.
dude.
Uh,
Either kiss or just do it. Like,
right. So then we had Damian Priest. We'll talk more about Bronson later. I'm kind of glossing over him right now because he's more important later. Damian Priest versus Lugu Kaiser was the next match. Big up there. These guys can work a match. Both of them can work, and they worked well with each other. Um, Kind of a down because now we're going into bloodline stuff. Sami Zayn's going around asking for a fifth man for War Games. So my
oh,
prediction has
you
come
called it.
true. War Games is a 5-man team.
You
So
called it.
he's asking people. He asks Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins says no. So I don't like that he said no, but I didn't really like he got asked in the first place. I don't think Seth Rollins is the guy for this, but we'll get back to that a little later.
I
You'll
mean,
see.
considering he'd be on the same team as Roman, can you really see him saying yes
That's
without
kind of
big
what he said. He's like,
provocation?
I will not. He's like, I will not team with Roman Reigns. I hate Roman Reigns. That's basically what he told Sam.
Yeah.
But then later in the show, Solo comes up to him and he's like, well, we know you hate Roman, so why don't you join us as our fifth man? And he goes, I'm not going to team with Roman Reigns. So why would I team with a cheap imitation of Roman Reigns? And walks off. And so I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, that's great. They're really playing up like Solo is now getting feedback from outside that he is not the chief he thinks he is. So they're
Yeah.
really playing with that insecurity of his. And I think that's going to be a big factor later on. Um, so let's see. Okay. Karrion Cross catches up to the Miz. Miz is apparently out of captivity.
I was gonna say, did they find him?
I guess they let him go. So then Karrion Cross catches up with him. We want to know where the Wyatts are. They drag him to the ring. They're about to put a beat down on him, and the Wyatt Six appears. And they start going after everybody, but it looks like they're trying to get to the Miz through Final Testament. They go after everybody, but then the Miz like turns around. Apparently, it's a big ruse, and the Miz really is with Final Testament, and he helps them lay out the Wyatt Six. So the Wyatt Six are laid out for the first time, proving straight up that this is not a supernatural thing. These guys are just weird, and they are
So
human.
I guess the question is then like, why'd they let him go?
Don't know. They didn't answer.
Because like if they were just gonna come and beat him up again, they could have done that way more easily if they just never let him go.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
But
not
I mean, I
sure.
guess they are weirdos with their own agendas.
Yeah, yeah,
So
I still don't know exactly what their
uh,
agenda is. So then we had Jade and Bianca versus Liv and Raquel. Just kind of made the tag match on the night. Liv and Raquel kind of, playing on the who's going to turn on who thing and ending up with a match out of it. Nia Jax and Tiffany Stratton kind of interfered, but Bianca and Jade still retained. It was a really short match. I don't know what's with these like short tag team matches that they do. But this was like the short one of the night. Usually, I guess they have like a longer women's match and a shorter one, or a couple of shorter ones. But this is one of the shorter ones. I'm not sure why they made this one of the shorter ones, since they're always trying to constantly promote and put Bianca and Jade on the screen. Which, of course, why not? They're stars.
well,
But also,
was it a dominant victory for them?
yeah, it's pretty. Well, I mean, there was some interference and stuff. So this mostly,
Mm,
it seemed like mostly a vehicle, like the Xavier Woods match.
yeah.
But I mean, but also the women's champions on this too, and then Nia Jax, who's the SmackDown Women's
Yeah.
Champion. So I guess we're gonna. I think we might be getting Raw versus SmackDown for the Women's Survivor Series. Um,
I
not sure
mean,
exactly, or maybe it's gonna be a War Games match. Also, I don't know how we're gonna do that. They haven't really said.
well,
Um,
Raw versus SmackDown, as the Canadians would say, as is tradition.
as is tradition. Yeah. But that was pretty much it. The after the tag match was when they had the Seth Rollins telling Solo off. So that was pretty
Mhm.
much the show. Wasn't a lot to it. This not like last week. Last week it was a banger show, but it was like stuff after stuff after stuff. This show a little bit more time to breathe, a little less stuff in it, but good overall. Really, the only thing I didn't really like about this show is that Pure Fusion Collective is still called Pure Fusion Collective.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a big proponent of Sonya Deville. I think she's fantastic. And honestly, I think she would have gotten a bigger push had they not signed Ronda Rousey
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. I think
because
all the
she
MMA
would have
ladies
been
probably would have.
their MMA girl. And then not that long after that, they signed Shayna.
Yeah,
So, like, I mean, Shayna was there before Ronda, I think, but like she was in NXT doing NXT things. So,
yeah,
like, Sonya, I think she was probably in line for a much bigger push a lot earlier, and then just a lot of stuff got in her way. So, at least for her sake, as a fan of Sonya's, at least this is going to give her something to do that
yeah.
doesn't require her to, you know, put on a suit and not wrestle like she didn't set out to do initially.
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, like I said, I really like the stable. I just don't like the way they're named. I think they could come up with
yeah,
a better name than PFC. But yeah, that said, that leaves us time for the shine.
yeah. All right. So for the shine, here are my notes for Dynamite. Lots of good stuff. Christian Cage and Hangman Page versus Jay White and Juice Robinson opened up the show. Great back and forth stuff, like just classic wrestling stuff. Fairly early on, the theme of the night comes into play, and that theme is chaos. As Hook appears from the crowd to abscond with Nick Wayne, who is there with the rest of the patriarchy. He just yeets him around into the crowd and just disappears. Never hear from him again, which is fine because since you don't get follow up on Collision, that means I can still follow it up on next Dynamite, and it's fine. But like, yeah, he just totally just he just yoinked him and just disappeared with him into the crowd. It was like what? But Christian Cage couldn't do anything about it because he was currently in a match. Um, Mother Wayne was concerned, but apparently not concerned enough to go after her son. And Kip Sabian is as the new favorite. Why would he even go after him? So it makes sense that he didn't. Um, but yeah, good stuff here. There was still tension between the two heels because they're really only helping each other out of a sense of convenience rather than camaraderie. So, that it still made sense. Like there was tension, but it never really boiled over. And of course, the Bang Bang Gang's going to be on the same page. Juice was way over with the crowd because he's, a chaos gremlin and people like
Mm-hmm.
crazy haired, wide eyed chaos gremlins in most of their wrestling contexts. Uh, the end, though, comes when Mother Wayne distracts the ref, and Kip Sabian just levels Juice with the clipboard.
Oh, that
Just
shot.
absolutely just like the noise on this it almost rivaled the bedpan noise. And if you've been a wrestling fan long enough, you know exactly which bedpan I'm referring to. We'll leave it at that. But yeah, it's just that thing was already dented. I can't imagine what it looks like now. But yeah, Cage picks up the win after that. He hits the kill switch and it's over. Just good, solid tag team wrestling that furthered a couple of different storylines at once, which was kind of nice because these guys have kind of intertwining feuds. Like Christian is feuding with both Jay White, kind of, and Hook, kind of, and
Mm-hmm.
then Hangman Page is, I mean, he's mostly feuding with uh just Jay White, but that means that you get the rest of the Bang Bang gang in tow with that, and you also get the weirdness with Christian because of how Christian had initially helped him in that Owen Cup tournament match against Jay White to give Hangman his only ever win against Jay White. So that you know furthered those two stories.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Another good thing, I thought that the Callis family madness that happened afterwards, I thought all of that was really well done. The promo battle between Will Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher was great. Even the screwdriver will sell for Ospreay. Is there anything
Mm-hmm.
that Will Ospreay can do that doesn't look good? Like he took he calls Fletcher to the ring and he's like, dude, I've been in the family. I know what's up. Empty your pockets. So he gives him. So Fletcher had the screwdriver in his pocket. He gives it to him, and then Ospreay just flings it out of the ring, and it just stabs right into the mat on the outside, just
Mm-hmm.
straight as you please. Like, is there anything that dude does that doesn't look amazing? Even
Not so
throwing the
far.
screwdriver. Um, Fletcher says he's tired of being seen as an Ospreay clone, but then Ospreay comes back in and, well, I mean, for you call me out for doing exact, for stabbing Kenny Omega and Kazuchika Okada in the back, but you did the exact same thing. So either you're a Will Ospreay clone or you want to do your own thing. Pick a lane, bruv, is what he said. Ospreay says also that the key difference is that by the time he did what he'd done to Okada and Omega, he'd already had a long string of accomplishments as a single wrestler compared to Fletcher's not nothing. It's not nothing. He had a very brief, uneventful reign as Ring of Honor World Television Championship, but they're treating it like it's nothing because really, it's nothing. So,
For translation, get your accolades up, bro.
yeah, get your accolades up, bruv. Also,
Straight up.
but I mean that's also a self burn though. Like it's like we don't even care about Ring of Honor.
Oh,
Like, I mean, I don't know if that was a good look. I don't know if Tony maybe had a little conversation with Ospreay, be like, hey, I mean, I know what you were doing there, but like,
but you can't
we're running both
burn.
brands here. You can't
Yeah.
burn them both.
Yeah,
Like,
you can't burn our
please,
developmental.
right? Um, but but Fletcher answers with, "It's not what I've done; it's what I'm going to do." And he officially challenges Ospreay to a match at Full Gear, which of course is accepted. Then Brian Cage and Lance Archer show up, which is fine by Will Ospreay because he brought friends too, which segues nicely into more chaos.
Gosh.
Uh, Lance Archer versus Roderick Strong was already in the book on the books. So as soon as he comes out, so does Roddy, and their Falls Count Anywhere match begins. And I gotta say, the best thing about this was the fact that the fall actually took place outside the ring. Thank you, AEW, for not doing the classic WWE thing of saying it's a Falls Count Anywhere match, brawl everywhere, and then still end in the ring. That defeats the purpose of the stipulation. So thank you for having it end out in the crowd, right next to a guy who was holding the sign that said, I drove 30 minutes to see Lance Archer wrestle. I thought that was amazing and appropriate. And it ended with the high knee again. So that's very clearly something that they're leaning into with Roddy. Um,
I want to interject here just for a second. I'm really glad you told me what happened at the end of that match because it hasn't been a lot of people talking about the end of that match on the internet. And I know from talking to a few other wrestling fans that who had the same experience that I did, but on our live stream on the US side, um, we got about half of the Roddy Lance Archer match. They went to commercial in the middle of the match. And then when they came back, it was now I was a little bit behind, so I don't know if it was just a glitch in my stream or what, but I know it happened to more than one person. That I've talked to other people
Huh.
about it. But when they came back from commercial after that commercial break in the Roddy and Lance match, it was already showing Adam Cole and Takeshita. So from that commercial to the commercial in the middle of Adam Cole and Takeshita, we had nothing.
Wow. Like, I mean, I watch using Triller on a VPN,
Mhm.
so I get everything that they show. So like all of the picture in picture stuff, it's not in picture in picture. It's just there. You hear the commentary, the whole bit. So
Yeah.
I got the whole show. I did not even read because of that. I didn't even realize that that was something that was happening. Um, quick thoughts on that. Now that I know that, on the one hand, uh, there is a sense of, oh well, you got to make sure you watch picture in picture then, because anything could happen. Which overall, that feeling that anything could happen, and so everything is must watch, is good. On the other hand, the way you find out about that because you weren't paying attention and you missed something that took place during a commercial break, that sucks. Uh, I mean, maybe it's one of those, maybe TK thought, well, this is a necessary thing to maintain that feeling. It's going to ruffle some feathers, but it's necessary because now people won't tune away.
Yeah.
Um, I think that honestly, that's the only way that you can teach somebody that lesson and reinforce that. So it
Mm-hmm.
sucks, but overall, I think I'm going to lean more towards that it was kind of justified as long as they don't keep hitting that. Like that's something that you get away with once a year to
Yeah.
reinforce it. That's not something that you do all the time. If you do it all the time, then people are going to get really pissed because, yeah, even if you're watching in picture, you don't get the commentary.
No. I have to watch the
Like
Triller feed to get that.
I
Yeah.
do
See, I
because
watch
I
the Triller
watch
feed
on
most of the
Triller,
time.
but
Yeah,
but
see, most of the time that's where I watch, but I was not able to watch the Triller feed this week, so I had to watch
uh
like a
so that's
VPN BR feed or something like that, and it
so
was
you would have
effed.
been in the same. We wouldn't even be talking about this if you had been watching the
Yeah, if
normal
I
way
just
you
watch
watch.
Triller like I normally
We
do,
wouldn't
yeah,
even
because there's no
know.
PIP or anything like that. I always
Yeah,
hear the funny commentary when they're supposed to be a commercial
yeah,
and all
yeah.
that, you know. So
It gives me good feels of going back to AEW Dark,
yeah, yeah.
where the commentary was like, we're just here to have
Taz, please come back
fun.
soon. We love you.
We do. Hope your knees are better.
Hope so.
um, but yeah, that's how I guess I'm glad that I did because I didn't know that. This is the first time I'm hearing of it. But yeah, so that was good, and then that led right into what you were talking about. What happened was Roddy, he won on the outside, and then he went back to the ring, got on a mic. That was 3 matches in a row for him, so he was guaranteed to face MJF. So the Adam Cole match versus Takeshita was going to basically determine if this was going to be a 3-way match.
Mhm.
So he got in the mic, got in the ring with a mic, and he started cutting a promo. And then Takeshita comes out and initiates some, a run in with him. Uh, and then that's when Cole comes in. So it saves Roddy, and then their match begins. And it was it was great too because it was. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but like TK is kind of he's patty, but in ways that make it entertaining a lot. Like this whole like thing where he's talking up this month as November to remember is obviously a shot at WWE and the fact that their ECW themed NXT episode from last week beat AEW in the ratings. I know we don't talk about ratings, but we have to for the sake of the point that I'm making. Um, Obviously, it ruffled TK's feathers, and so he's going all in on the ECW. Like, oh, you think that, you never even cared about ECW. I care about ECW. I was there in the ECW arena when I was a teenager, blah, 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 blah. It's obviously gotten under his skin to the point where he's named the entirety of the month, the November to Remember, after their November to Remember to pay-per-view. He's also, and then in this instance too, Adam Cole came to the ring and his music was playing. He ran to the ring to save Roddy and he beat the crap out of Takeshita and threw him out of the ring. His music is still going, just like New Jack, up until the point where where does the boom and the Adam Cole baby with the rest of the crowd, and that's when that's clearly a nod to New Jack, clearly.
Yeah,
and that's not even the first time. Like Anarchy in the Arena has done that thing like 3 times now,
yeah,
and I love it every time. I pop for it every time, so that's not a complaint for the record. But like between this and then this and the thing I'm going to talk about in Collision a little bit, like it's very clear that TK basically I think he wants to reclaim like some sense of, we're more of a spiritual successor to ECW despite the fact that you own the brand and the library. I think that's what he's going for. It's
yeah.
like you beat us using stuff that you don't even care about, and that pisses me off. So that's why he's done this whole thing. I think, in my opinion, from what I've observed. That being said, match between Takeshita and Adam Cole was probably Cole's best match since returning. I think it's taken him a little while to get the wheels going a little bit. Like he's not quite the Adam Cole of 2 years ago. But I think Takeshita brings out the best in everybody. Generally, that dude
Yeah.
is an excellent professional wrestler. Uh, but yeah, I love the flow of all this. This went from in ring promo to match as like one big entity, and that really helps. I mean, I know now that it was interrupted by commercial shenanigans and that interrupted the flow. But if you were watching on Triller like I was, to me it felt very immersive because everything flowed into each other. There weren't any breaks really, so it was like, oh, these things were naturally consequences of what came before it. They're not segments in and of themselves that are isolated. It was just all big one thing, which makes the universe that they build feel more immersive and it draws you in. At least for me, that's what it did for me. The match actually, I was going into this match, I was very concerned how it was going to end because on the one hand you have Adam Cole who needs to face MJF, and on the other hand you have the international champion who already took a pin in a prior tag team match. Really can't really afford to be losing non-title matches, so they leaned into the Dynamite Diamond ring. They had Takeshita roll out to the ring, outside the ring, finds the other kind of ring, puts it on his pinky, smashes Cole with it. 1, 2, 3. And to prolong this thing, I guess, it's just going to be Roddy and MJF at Full Gear. Cole loses. Mm-hmm. So I imagine Cole will probably be in Roddy's corner at the pay-per-view. I can't imagine him just sitting out the show. I imagine he'll probably play into the finish and probably cost Roddy the match accidentally. Mm-hmm. But if it's just MJF and Roddy, there's no reason Roddy should win.
Yeah.
The money where they're going with this is MJF and Cole. With Cole, if being victorious as the baby face. I mean, if they stick with the rules that they're given and they eventually win the fans over a little bit more than they have to this point, I mean, there's no reason that MJF should go over Cole, but he has every reason to go over Roddy in order to build to get to Cole. Mm-hmm. So, I think that was probably the best way that they could have handled that, honestly. Something I didn't really care for, Britt Baker versus Penelope Ford. Penelope in the ring hasn't really looked like she's lost much of a step, even despite being out of the ring for two years. I think she still needs to work on some intangibles. I mean, I know that sounds arrogant for somebody who's never been in the business or whatever,
Mhm.
but like she's almost emotionless out there.
Yeah.
Like she hits the moves, and her taunting of the crowd is good. Like when they get under her skin, she snaps back, and that's good. But like she doesn't really have much emotion against her opponent in the ring, and I feel like that's probably the biggest um knock on her. I mean, everything else is great, honestly. Like she's got a unique move set. I love that she uses the Muda lock. I honestly don't know why more people don't use it because it's great.
Hmm.
I'm a big Great Muda fan myself. Love the guy. Um, but really, it wasn't Ford that I'm knocking here. It's Britt Baker seemed super tuned out. She did not seem into this at all. Not even her entrance. She was not about it. I don't know if she's still sick. I don't know what's going. I don't know if it's because she got suspended a few weeks ago for her behavior, or a few months ago for her behavior. I don't know if she's still broken up over breaking up with Adam Cole. I don't know if it's just because, to be fair, most of the rest of the division has lapped her a couple of times now in terms of skill because she can't commit to because it's hard to commit to two full-time professions. Let's be
Hmm.
real here. You know, nobody's saying you can't do it all, but doing it all has consequences. And one of them or both of them is going to suffer if you split your time between the two
Hmm.
naturally. And I think at this point, Britt Baker, mostly due to the strength of her personality, which is very strong, has been for the first like 2 or 3 years of AEW, has been essentially the face of the women's division. But as they've gotten a deeper and deeper and more talented roster, the injury that she had that put her on the shelf for so long, almost everybody's lapped her. Like
Hmm.
she's honestly probably in the bottom third in terms of in ring in the division, this very deep division. Like she can't just coast on her personality anymore. Like, and what I will say is that the finish to this match was great. The finish to this match was very, very, very compelling. My ears perked up like a schnauzer. Like it was like, oh, she's in the Muda lock. Oh, she's reaching around to grab the mandible claw to get out of it. Let's go. She puts her in the lockjaw proper for the submission win. I thought the finish was great. I thought it was really creative. But
Yeah.
like Baker showed like other than that showed no signs of life. I'm like, you poor thing. Like, what is going on here? Like, I don't know.
Hmm.
I feel like it's probably personal stuff, and I don't want to get on people for their personal stuff. She's been through clearly she's been through a lot,
Yeah.
but it is unfortunately showing in her work. And Penelope tried her best to save it, and it unfortunately it wasn't enough. There's only so much you can do if your dance partner isn't really into it, you
Yeah.
know. But to end on a high note here, FTR versus Kings of the Black Throne was the main event, and it was FTR versus Kings of the Black Throne. You think it wasn't going to be amazing?
Yeah.
Like
Look
these two
badass.
teams are fantastic. FTR, I still to this, they're taking losses lately, putting other teams over, probably because I think they said that this last contract is probably going to be the last one that they have.
Hmm.
I think Dax wants to probably retire after that. But, so, they're putting a lot of people over. But, you know, I still say, I don't think I've ever, and this may be recency bias, but I don't think I've ever seen a better pure tag team than FTR.
Hmm.
I adore them. I own 2 or 3 FTR shirts. Like, they are my favorite tag team of all time. The name of our podcast, notwithstanding, with all due respect. But yeah, this match was awesome. It was really back and forth. I was kind of surprised by how vulnerable Malachi Black allowed himself to look. He got beat up pretty good
Yeah.
for a lot of this match. I think probably just to mark the contrast when Brody King came in and just beat the crap out of everybody. But if that's what the thought behind it was, it worked.
Yeah.
Lots of high spots, false finishes, including a very close near fall off of what was going to be Dante's Inferno, but countered into the Shatter Machine
Mm-hmm.
on Brody King, only for Malachi Black to make the save. And then that cringe-inducing spike pile driver on the
Oh
apron.
God, man.
I I was like, Malachi, are you okay? Are you all right, dude? Because it looked nasty in the best
Yeah.
way. Um, the end though came when Brody kept trying to hit Dax with lariats and pinning him, and Dax just wouldn't stay down. So he just choked him out, standing rear naked choke with, and you could tell like Dax was really like trying to look like he was going dead weight to make it seem like he was really legit getting choked out.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those small things I love about Dax is he tries so hard to make those little things make it more uh, realistic looking, and
Mm-hmm.
he just chokes him out in the middle of the ring, and there was like this gasp in the crowd, like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that. I don't think anybody expected that.
Right.
But yeah, and they put them over, and they shook hands afterwards, and that was that. It was a good victory for Black and King. I think I want the world for FTR, but they'll have their time. And as far as putting teams in the four-way, nobody's beating Private Party. So like, just give other teams that don't get as much exposure some time on pay-per-view. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's how I feel about that. I think that's perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. It was a good show, man. I really enjoyed
Yeah, I thought it was a really good show overall. I mean, the women's match notwithstanding, and
it.
that was only because one person was having an off night, um, maybe an off week, month, year, whatever. But like in terms of this was an off night. It wasn't because of both people. It was because of just one person.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody has bad nights. I have I have bad days. Um, I have days where I don't want to do anything. I suffer from chronic depression and anxiety. Yeah, I get it. I
Mm-hmm.
totally get it. So I hope that Britt works through her stuff. I hope that she come back stronger because I do think that she has. I really do think that she can still add to this division. Um, but it's not whatever it is. It's not going to be as high profile as she had enjoyed until she can devote more time to the in-ring work. I think
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that's up to her to find. But you know, hopefully she can work through it because I really do think that she's a net positive for the division, even if her heyday is probably in the rear view.
Yeah,
All
I
right,
hope she comes back to form. I mean, I
two.
like Britt Baker, so.
I mean, oh my gosh, I mean, she was like the shining beacon during the pandemic era, where there were no crowds. Like she completely reformed, the role model, the whole thing. It was like Cheetah was the wrestling backbone, and uh, Baker was the backbone in terms of character.
Yeah.
So like it was as she's earned her spot on the roster. Now she just kind of has to, if she wants to be considered in the same league as a lot of the ladies that have been uh, brought in and or developed. I mean, Jamie Hayter's essentially an AEW original. She wasn't like brought in from somewhere else. Her coming in and Mercedes Monet coming in are two completely different scenarios. Same with Tony Storm and Saraya. Like they were known elsewhere. Jamie Hayter was known on the Brit Rest scene, but other than that, like she wasn't known to an audience. So she's essentially an AEW original, even if she
Yeah.
wasn't there from literal day one. Um, but yeah, like uh, but even the originals who come here, like honestly, even even the Renegade Twins are probably better in the ring by now than Britt Baker currently is showing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when the guys when the guys and girls whose entire job it is to put you over are actually more worthy of the spot of being put over than you are, it's time to re-examine things.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And she can do it. She can. It's just a matter of if she'll accept that she has to,
Yeah.
or if she has the ability and time to. Like, I mean, she's a dentist. She still has a practice. Who knows how
Yeah.
much time that takes? I don't know. I ain't a dentist.
Probably a lot.
Probably. She's a doctor, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's enough about that. It's time for let's go into the Morton here.
Yeah. With Morton, we got the SmackDown for this week. It opened up with Cody Rhodes calling out Kevin Owens, but Kevin Owens wasn't there. Nick Aldis came out instead, got a real lot of chorus of boos, and said that Kevin Owens wasn't there. I told him not to be here because of what he did to Randy last week with the pile driver. Cody said he's not going to wait very long. It came out later that Nick Aldis had ordered Kevin Owens to come in when they did the Kevin Owens promo. He said that he was like, "Oh, he just ordered me to come to SmackDown next week." And so we'll see what happens then. Didn't really go much farther than that. But then they had the first of their trios matches to determine who will be in the match for the women's U.S. title. It was Bayley, Candice LeRae, and BFAB. Now, I kind of knew BFAB wasn't going to win this. Something I don't like is when they put in somebody on something like this that you're just like, I know this person just is
This
probably going to
person
take
is
the
here
pin.
specifically to take the pin
Yeah,
to
yeah.
protect the other person who isn't winning.
Yeah. Now with as many wins as they've been giving Candace lately and being the speed champion and everything, I figured, okay, there's a steady shot of her to win this. But of course, Bayley rules all. So Bayley wins. I'm not mad at it. Bayley being the first women's US champion wouldn't be, you know, I wouldn't be against that. It wouldn't
It
hurt
would
my feelings.
ensure that she would still be a Grand Slam champion, however they wanted to determine that.
Yeah, that's true. Um, it was a pretty good match, but yeah, I mean, like I said, Bailey wins. It was a good match though. They gave it plenty of time. It got allowed to breathe. They really put forth a really good effort in this one. I appreciated it a lot. Um, then we had LA Knight and Umberto having a match. Now they basically he had another promo off against Santos Escobar, and I just don't know, man. I don't know what they're like. He has literally had Santos Escobar come after this U.S. championship like 7 times now and get beaten handily every time. Like, I don't know how in the world they're supposed to make us believe that he is a legitimate contender for this title because he keeps getting thrashed every time he comes after it.
That's some
Eh,
old school WWF right
yeah,
there.
like LA Knight says, I'm going to whoop your ass and hit your factory reset button pretty much every time he comes after him. And he does that exact thing pretty much every time. It's like the guy is forgetting that he just got his ass whooped trying to come after this title. So, I mean, I don't like this part. I did like the match between Umberto and LA Knight. It was pretty good. Sir, I mean, not a lot of like spites to write home mommy about, but it was a good wrestling match,
Yeah.
but I don't have a problem watching LA Knight. I think the guy really can work. I don't think like a lot of people be like, oh, he's not a new wrestler. He is a new wrestler to me. He hasn't been around that long to me.
Yeah.
At least not in this iteration of him. And even if he is in his 40s, he's
Yeah, he
got the
looks
work.
great for
He
40.
looks great, and he's got the work rate of a
He looks
20-year old.
fantastic. And I don't think he's
So,
ever really been injured like in a big way. I think I saw some interview that he says like, yeah, I've never really had a serious injury in my entire career, which is like insane.
right.
But you know what that means is that he's safe.
Mm-hmm. Now, LA Knight was also he got approached by Sami Zayn before the match and told him no. So he's not going to
Yeah.
be the fifth guy on War Games.
Oh, he didn't say, yeah.
No, he didn't say yeah. So then after that, we had Motor City Machine Guns versus Street Profits, which was a hell of a match.
Ooh, that
Um,
sounds like a hell of a
it
match.
was a really great match until Tommaso Ciampa interfered and started beating everybody up. And then Johnny Gargano like got in between everybody and like got Ciampa to leave, and Ciampa left, but then he was trying to tell the Street Profits like, "Hey, I didn't have anything to do with that. Like, we're really sorry." Blah blah. And Angelo Dawkins just knocked him on his ass. And so, like, and they were looking like the Street Profits are looking pissed that this was ruined by Ciampa and all that. So I think we're probably leading to a three-way between the Machine Guns and Street Profits and DIY. If
That'll
we're
be
not
good.
leading directly to a DIY breakup, which if they lose that three-way match, I think that will probably happen. Okay. At this point, they go back to the bloodline. Jay tells Roman he needs to make a call, but they don't really elaborate on that. That's for later. Nia Jax defended her title against Naomi. Of course, she retained, but she retained after Candice LeRae interfered on Nia Jax's behalf. Candice LeRae is trying to supplant Tiffany. I think that's the storyline right now.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, I mean, sometimes I think Nia Jax is entertaining, and sometimes I'm like, all right, stop it.
Do you know where Nia is really entertaining?
Hmm.
Outside the ring.
I
Like
agree.
she has a big personality that's actually kind of charming.
Mm-hmm.
Like
If she would
her
be
her
that person, I think it'd probably work out
you
better.
put her together with Alexa Bliss in a non-character situation, and they are incredibly funny together. Those two are like besties, and it's really cute actually.
Mm-hmm.
It's really cute.
So then we got then we have the bloodline. They come out, the new bloodline comes out, and then Roman comes out, and the bloodlines are both facing each other 4-on-4, and they go into a brawl. And here's where we loop back from earlier because the fifth man for the new bloodline has been revealed, and it's Bronson Reed.
Which makes you think, yeah, Seth is gonna
That
be on the team anyway.
literally telegraphs to me that Seth is going to be the guy. However,
Yeah.
after they got beat up in the ring, Jay's, laying there next to Roman. He's telling him, you got to make this call. You got to make the call. And so then to close out SmackDown, they go back to the dressing room. Roman's in there by himself. He pulls his phone out and he like opens up, I guess, Siri or whatever it is he has on his phone. He's like, call wise man. That got a huge pop. Just saying his
Yeah.
name got a huge pop. But he said, call wise
Not
man.
even his name.
Yeah, not even his name. He said, call wise man. That got a huge pop. But then the phone like does the ring thing, and then it goes to a message saying that the number had been disconnected. So I don't know where Paul Heyman is in the story. I know he's at home just chilling.
Yeah.
But I don't know where he is in the story, but his number's been disconnected. And so now Roman can't call him. Now, I had assumed that they were probably saying make the call, and they were talking about like maybe Hikuleo or somebody like that. But apparently it's Paul Heyman. But with Bronson Reed being the fifth guy, that kind of just telegraphs that Seth Rollins is going to be the fifth guy for the OG bloodline. Even though, despite their history with the Shield, it does not currently make sense for that to happen, especially with Seth on Raw going, I ain't joining that team. And why would I join the team of the guy who's just a cheaper version of him? Like
Especially since he doesn't need to join Roman's team to get in a fight with Bronson Reed. They're on the same brand. They can do that
they've
anytime.
Yeah, and they do. They literally for the last like 3 weeks they have been fighting all the time.
They can, in my eyes, like at this point, they would have to really, really sweeten the pot, sweeten the deal in order to get him to do it. And if they do that, fine. Fine. But you're going to need a really good storyline reason other than just, oh, well, Bronson Reed's on that team and I want to fight. Look, fight him now. Yeah. Go. Get out of
take him out of the equation and make him 4-on-4 again.
Yeah,
whatever.
You don't need a pay-per-view to fight. You just fight him.
Yeah, so I don't like that. I don't like that they're telegraphing that Rollins is going to be the fifth guy so hard. I don't like it. And if they don't go ahead and book Rollins in a match for the pay-per-view, that's what I'm going to assume he's doing all the way up until the pay-per-view, until they tell us at least. That's really the only thing I don't really care for from this week, though. All the matches were real. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Nia Jax in the ring, but her match with Naomi was good. Her headbutt, like she headbutted Naomi, looked gnarly. She swung her around like she was nothing. It was cool. but I'm just not the biggest fan of her
It's
in the
when
ring. But
yeah, and
I
when
didn't
she
dislike it.
leans into the big wrestler stuff,
Hmm.
she's fine. It's
Yeah,
when she tries to do Hurricane Ranas and stuff that's like, no,
yeah,
please no.
yeah. So
Don't do this to
so
us
yeah,
or
overall,
yourself.
I really like SmackDown overall. I thought it was a good show. I think WWE did pretty good overall all week long. I only have a couple of complaints, and really they're kind of superficial. Like I don't really know if I mean, Seth Rollins being a fifth member isn't really superficial, but I don't care for that, even though they haven't officially announced that. So I'm not absolutely sure that's what's happening, but yeah, they're kind of foreshadowing it a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't like Pure Fusion Collective as a name. It's not a stable. It's a name that I don't like, and
yeah.
I don't think they're going to change it at this point. So I'm just
No,
shouting into the void for that
I
one.
I still say that they should be Tal Alpha Row.
That would work.
I mean, that was my original pitch for the pivot from the submission sorority when they originally brought those girls in, and then they realized that that was the name of an adult website. So it was just Team PCB, which is just the stupidest thing ever. It's like you can still go with the sorority thing, just make it like a sorority and have
Yeah,
it spell out tap for the submission.
yeah,
Like it's perfect, and of course they're idiots and they didn't think
no,
any further than Team PCB.
yeah.
Like that
So they,
fucking means anything.
yeah, so that, yeah. I mean, other than the complaints I have, the two kind of superficial ones, and we'll see how the second one turns out. But other than that,
Yeah,
WWE put on good programming this week. Special shout out to NXT that I did watch this week because the women's division over there goes hard. And more wrestling programs need to give that kind of opportunity to their women.
yeah.
So yeah, other than that, I think WWE did good this week, and that leads us to our hot tag.
Hot tag. All right, your hot tag for this week is Collision from 11/9/24. Uh, Lots of good stuff on Collision. I maintain that for somebody who has my taste and sensibilities, Collision is not all the time, but often a better show than Dynamite. This was kind of interesting because there were a lot of matches on this card that were promoted beforehand that you might say, I don't know, these seem kind of like not really like super important in the grand scheme of things. There weren't like any, aside from the women's title match, there weren't like any like, big matches like there were on Dynamite. But yeah, most everything delivered. Starting off, we're going to start off with the men, not because they opened the show, but because I want to circle back around. Danny Garcia versus Johnny TV wasn't really so much for the match, so that was good too.
Mm-hmm.
With especially with Johnny TV and MXM Collection being together makes so much sense,
It does.
and like it gives something that Hennigan slash Morrison slash Nitro slash Mundo slash whatever TV Johnny TV has never had before. Flunkies. He has never had flunkies before. It reminds me of when Jericho first came in AEW. He'd never been in a stable before. Not a
Yeah.
single one up until that point. That's crazy to think about. Johnny TV has flunkies now. He has understudies or whatever we're gonna call them, like to do his bidding. And I think that's great. I think that's a great spot for all of them because it guarantees Johnny TV more TV time, which he is deserving of, and it gives MXM Collection an, a similar kind of character for them to play off of and have comedic hijinks with. Everybody wins in this scenario. Great idea putting these guys together. That being said, I don't know. You can tell Johnny's getting old.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Not by his in-ring work, but because his hair was awful. Like I generally don't go on about a wrestler's appearance, but considering that his appearance is a lot of the character of Johnny
Mm-hmm.
TV, like, ooh, dude, your hair is thinning out, and it's like at this point, keep it wet and greased and pulled back tight because it everything else is great. Like Johnny's always had an incredible physique, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not changed at all. If anything, he's put on a little bit more bulk. But like, his hair is betraying his age, and
Mm-hmm.
for a character who kind of is all about image, that is more important than it would be for most other wrestlers, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, the match itself was good. Uh, Johnny TV dominated a lot of it. But Danny Garcia, my boy, Danny Garcia, my my fellow Buffalonian, he comes back and he has. I think he has to overcompensate because he is kind of undersized to a degree. But like
Mm.
every time he comes back, he does with such fury and rage that's instantly believable that this guy could mess you up. Like if you got Danny Garcia mad in real life, I'm fairly certain he could beat ever loving tar out of nearly anybody that's around his size or a little bit bigger, maybe even a lot bigger, depending. Um, but yeah, but the angle here is what was most important. Daddy Magic, Matt Menard, was at ringside calling the match because, he and Danny are besties. And we had kind of an echo from Dynamite where Hook came in and absconded with Nick Wayne. Jack Perry, who had earlier come in on his scapegoat bus, he'd come in through the crowd and he took away Daddy Magic while Garcia was getting beaten up and not noticing that it was happening. He beats up Daddy Magic and takes him to the back. Unlike last week, though, this will get followed up upon. But yeah, the finish of the actual match itself comes when Garcia uh, he wins with like a Cobra clutch that's like on the mat. Like
Mm.
he's like it's almost like a Cobra clutch chin lock thing where he's pulling back on it, almost like the statement maker that Mercedes Monet uses, but with the Cobra clutch. And he gets him to tap out, and then he's celebrating with the crowd, and he realizes Daddy Magic isn't there anymore, and so he goes over to ask Tony Schiavone, where did Matt go? And then on the big screen, you see Jack Perry dragging Matt Menard over to the Scapegoat Express or whatever they're calling the bus. And he beats him up a little bit more, and then he wraps a chain around him, and it looks like he's going to drag him.
Oof.
Now, that's something that's very, very charged with a lot of different things. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless of extra contexts, from Laramie or whatever, it's still holy crap, is that a dangerous thing to do?
Mm-hmm.
Even to despite all the baggage that comes with it. But Danny speeds out there. He makes the save right in time. He beats up Jack Perry. And he undoes Matt Menard, and they finally do the thing, Aaron. They finally do the thing I've been begging them to do for months. They made Jack Perry pay for leaving the bus open and the engine running with the keys in there.
They
They
stole the
finally
bus.
paid it off. They're listening. They're
Someone
listening.
is
They're
listening to
finally
us.
paying it off. So it, at this point, I know it goes to a commercial because at that point the trailer feed cuts off, and then when it comes back, you see they've tied Jack Perry to the hood of the car with that chain and a whole bunch of other stuff, bro. And they take him on a joyride with Matt Menard took the camera guy's camera and he's commandeering the camera from inside the bus while he's driving the bus, which is incredibly dangerous on its own. But he's on the hood of the car. Like Jack Perry, I think, looked at his father's career and is like, man, acting is cool, but what's really cool is stunt work. Because this guy has been strapped to the hood of a bus, a moving bus, a speeding bus, has been set on fire multiple times now. Like, has has gone through real glass of his own volition. This dude is masochistic, and he is very. I think he is like, this is the way I can meld two of my interests into one: pro wrestling and legitimate stunt work. Like, I think he's living his dream. Good for Jack Perry. The only thing I want to say as a negative of this is that they didn't follow it up after they drove out of the arena with him.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to see them like intersperse more. Like, it reminded me of the thing in '95 with the backlot brawl at WrestleMania
Mm-hmm.
12 with Goldust and Roddy Piper, how they interspersed it all throughout with the car chase that was supposed to be OJ Simpson, and
Yeah.
the whole thing. It's like I wanted to see the rest of the show revolve around them driving him all around Albany. Obviously, that's not something you can do. Probably you need a lot of permits to do
Oh
that,
yeah.
but
Yeah, I
but
imagine it's
I
quite a
thought that
lot.
would have been rad. Like I really do. You got you gotta think that there's probably somebody in the police department in Albany that's a wrestling fan that would be like, oh yeah, I'll sign off on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But oh well. But yes, I loved that they finally paid that off. He finally paid for his irresponsible bus shenanigans.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Next was La Facción Ingobernable versus the Acclaimed. I was really surprised that this was in the middle of the show, and kind of in the first half a little bit. Like I felt with the spot in the final spot in the 4-way tag title match at Full Gear on the line. I thought it would be a little bit later as like the semi-main event or whatever, but they did it here. Um, and I mean, it was good. Like the Acclaimed had they cut an interview with Lexi backstage prior to this where they keep on teasing dissension in minor ways, including the Hurt Business coming up at the end of the segment, encouraging Matt Caster to use his size to his advantage, but completely ignoring Anthony Bowens. And like they kind of like waved it off or whatever. Uh, and then throughout the match, there were like little things where like there was one point where Caster kind of frustratedly blind tagged himself in. There was there were a couple of other things where there was just miscommunications and stuff like that, but they still picked up the win. Rush Rouge must really respect Anthony Bowens though, because he was bumping and selling for him like he owed him money, which is very unlike him. Like if you've ever
Mm-hmm.
you've seen plenty of Bruce matches,
Oh
he only
yeah.
sells for the people that he likes. So he must really like Anthony Bowens because
Yeah.
he was a maniac for Bowens specifically in this match. Oh, there was one cool spot where he had Caster. He does the thing with the cable, right? He
Yeah.
like chokes somebody with a cable that he finds. Well, Caster turns that on him and he starts choking him. Caster's inside the ring. He's bent through the ropes outside the ring to kind of hang him with it. But
Mm-hmm.
Roosh just reaches up and grabs the cord that Caster's holding, and then like gives him an iconoclasm out to the floor. And I'm thinking, yeah, there was no way he was going to let Max Caster steal his spot. No,
Yeah.
that was on purpose. That was pitched on purpose to them because he doesn't like Max Caster.
Yeah.
It seems like most people don't. Uh, but but yeah, miscommunications between the Acclaim boys. They tease the loss here pretty heavily, but eventually they take advantage of the Beast Mortos missing a cannonball senton in the corner. They hit the arrival and the mic drop combo, but even like in their celebration after the fact, they all scissored and everything, but Caster was out of the scissoring a little bit quicker than he normally does.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't really seem to enjoy it. Didn't really seem like celebrating.
Yeah.
It's a lot of little. It's not like big stuff. I appreciate that it's a lot of like little tiny things
Mm-hmm.
because that's what happens in real life generally. Is like when you get when somebody's bugging you and bugging you and bugging you, it's never really the big things. It's always like the little tiny things. Like when you spend too much time with one person, it's like it's those little things that get to you eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was really true to life. I like how they're building that. I think that they're probably Caster's probably going to get pinned at Full Gear and push that inevitable split.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wish LFI had won, but I get why they weren't booked that way.
Yeah.
Like for this particular, because the split with the Acclaimed is it. I mean, it's a big story. They've been together since nearly the very beginning of AEW.
Mm-hmm.
So like them splitting is overdue, but it should be treated like a big deal. It should. We're skipping around again time wise because of what I want to talk about at the very end. but they ended the show with a video package, which isn't in and of itself isn't bad. But I still feel like they set it up weird. Like they set it up like they were talking about on commentary. It was like Tony was setting up this video package as if he was conducting an in-ring interview, and it's like
Yeah.
really weird. And then I immediately didn't care about the weirdness because the video package was rad as hell.
Yeah, it
Like
was really
it
good.
was full November Rain, like all 9 minutes of it, and it went down every single story that was heading into Full Gear. Like it reminded me back when WWF used to do that all the time leading into pay per views.
Hmm.
You know, they would do this. This was standard practice in
Yeah.
WWF/E for a long time. They would always end their go home show with one of the, especially if it was WrestleMania season. It would always end like you remember. I mean, probably the most famous one is the My Way promo.
Yeah.
I mean, that only really had the one story that it focused on, but I mean, that's all anybody was focused on in X7. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just to this day, people talk about how good it was, even if they've soured on Limp Bizkit,
Hmm.
because you know it was so effective. This reminded me of that. Um, yeah, like I know this is like I said earlier. I know this is part of TK's pettiness swiping back at the ECW NXT show, but this really worked for me. And if my
Hmm.
Blue Sky feed is any indication, it was almost unanimously a home run with
Oh
the
yeah.
fan base too.
Yeah, it put me in
Um,
the mood for this pay per view for sure.
yeah, though why was it on Collision? Why did they do it here? That's the question I have. Like, it wasn't bad. Like, if it was me, I would put it at the end of this one. If since they've already done it on Collision, I would continue to do that on Dynamite and Rampage as well. Why not? It got
Hmm.
universal acclaim. I don't think people would mind seeing it again. And there are two actual shows that could be considered go home shows to the actual pay per view, whereas this
Hmm.
one was not. It was the
Yeah.
go home Collision, but it wasn't the go home show.
Yeah.
So um, my question is like, why here? I ultimately what we got was super awesome, so I'm not really complaining. I'm just very curious, I guess, as to why they chose the first of all why they chose to do it here and why they chose to set it up in such a weird way, as if it was like an event. Like,
Hmm.
did they did they even show it in the arena when they taped it on Thursday?
I hope so.
I don't think so. You know why? Because they had clips of stuff that happened on that show.
Oh yeah, that's
So,
true.
well, I mean, unless they had, oh, this is where we're going to put whatever spot is supposed to happen here. Like, unless they had some very quick editors, I don't think that happened. So I
No,
don't
probably
think that
not.
live crowd saw that. So, like,
Mm.
did they just get a really short collision and like extra ROH stuff? I don't know, but like, it was the setup and the you know, and the timing were weird, but man, I do think it was outweighed by the quality of the video itself.
Yeah.
Um, if we're still talking, I'm obligated to find some constructive criticism for stuff that I didn't like, but really, there wasn't a lot I didn't like about the show. Just like minor things, like the stuff they already talked about,
Hmm.
not following up on the Scapegoat Express later. Um, Jake Roberts still kind of feels out of place with LFI. Like
Yeah.
that's kind of weird. Max Caster feeling kind of tired to the point where even his raps don't really hit and pop the crowd anymore. Uh, like
All right.
ultimately, it was a top notch show, but like little tiny tweaks here or there are
Hmm.
necessary. But what I wanted to talk about to end this segment was the complete 180 rebound of what I talked about last week, which was women's wrestling in AEW. Last week was a terrible week for them, but this collision was a 180 flip. It was a great episode for the women. First of all, you opened up the show with Mina Shirakawa and Harley Cameron. Mina's return match after going back to Japan after the summer. I don't know how exclusive she is to Stardom or AEW or whatever. I imagine whenever her Stardom contract runs out, they will make her all elite for real.
Mm.
because they love her and I love her and I want her to be here. I think she is so engaging as a character. Like, I saw her wrestle live when I went to, what was it, Dynamite in June? I think it was. I
Mhm.
think it was late June. And she and Stephanie Vaquero were on that show too. And like, it was she engages the crowd in a way that I feel like a lot of other Joshi wrestlers don't get the opportunity to, because in most Japanese promotion situations, the crowds are generally more respectful and they're kind of silent and then they'll pop for stuff, but the interaction with the crowd isn't as important as the action in the ring. But Mina is a full blown character. She seems like a big extrovert, seems to revel in the performance aspect of it. Harley Cameron is very much the same way. I I love Harley so much. She's so funny. She's so funny, and she's got that perfect kind of unhinged quality to her that makes her character really fun. Um, people will people will say what they will say about how these two and a couple of other women will go about expressing themselves in the ring, but fact of the matter is, Harley is improving match by match, and Mina is where she needs to be, and she's really really good. These two had some sports entertainment type stuff in there, but the match was solid. Match was solid. Mina has some really cool, unique offense. She won. I think this is why Ricochet started using the Spirit Gun, is because his vertigo is the same as the Glamorous Driver, and they knew that Mina was coming back, so they probably didn't want them to have the same finish under different names.
Mhm.
So, yeah, she won with a really great spinning back fist, and then into the Glamorous Driver for the win. And then the main event match of the show was the Anna Jay getting into a rubber match, no DQ stip for the World Women's title against Mariah May. And as hard as I've been on Anna Jay in the past several weeks, and I've been pretty critical, uh, this match reminded me that of all the things that she's actually really good at, the surprising thing that she's best at is creative hardcore wrestling.
Yeah.
Like, and you know what? It's the fact that she is so conventionally pretty, conventionally attractive, works in her favor in this, because you wouldn't expect, rightly or wrongly, everybody has their own unconscious societal biases, but you wouldn't think somebody who looks like that is going to be super tough, and you wouldn't think that they'd be willing to put themselves through hell in a match like this. And and that works to her favor because it surprises you every time. And it's like, oh yeah, I remember she's actually really good at this particular style of wrestling. For whatever reason, this seems to be her wheelhouse. And
Mhm.
I think that surprise that I have every time is refreshing, and I enjoy that feeling. It's like, oh yeah, keep I keep forgetting about this. Why do I keep forgetting about this?
Mhm.
Like, this was definitely the best of their three matches. Absolutely, no question about it.
Mhm.
If I have one criticism, is she did use the gory bomb on a ladder and only got a 2 count from it. Like,
Oof.
that's your finish, and you used it in an assisted way, and it didn't get you the win.
Yeah. I
Like,
was a little
I
worried
would
about
have
that.
rethought that spot. I would have, if it was me, I would have done it and then sold like I was so exhausted that I couldn't make the cover in time,
Mhm.
because that puts over this, that gives the crowd that spot, that great spot, but also protects your finish.
Yeah.
That's what I would have done, but it wasn't me in there, and she's far tougher than I am. I mean, you saw that suplex onto the rail, right? Jeez
Oh
Louise.
yeah, that shit was
Oh my gosh. I
nasty.
mean,
Holy crap.
there was no bend on that either. They landed that flat and that looked awful. I
Oh
can't
god.
imagine how bad those ladies are feeling. They are tough as nails. Um, the match came to an end when Mariah was in the Queen Slayer, but she reached into her pocket to grab a can of, I don't know what it was. They taped it off probably to avoid having to pay the rights to anybody, for
Mm-hmm.
marketing purposes. It was all covered in black tape, but you assume it was like hairspray, or my guess is that it probably was really like spray on deodorant
Yeah.
or something like that.
Brandon
But
Cutler's
like
cold
these,
spray.
yeah, brand colors cold spray. Either way, she dug it out of her pocket and sprayed Anna Jay in the eyes with it, and then hit her with probably the gnarliest uh, stump pile driver like that.
The dent
That
they left in
storm
that
zero,
chair.
that storm zero onto the chair was oof,
Ooh.
oof. It looked real good and real bad at the same time.
Oh yeah.
Uh, and that was the finish. And you know what? I buy it as the finish for sure.
The dent they left in
Um,
that chair was proof enough for me. Oh,
yo, no kidding.
Jesus.
But yeah, like overall, women's wrestling on this show was done so much better than it was last week over the course of both shows. Uh, Harley Cameron continues to improve every time she gets in there. Mina Shirakawa has a style that's all her own that complements both serious wrestling and fun, goofy stuff. Mariah May shows that she can actually. This was the first we've seen her get mean, but we hadn't seen her get tough, and this allowed her to show that she can handle like the dirty, gritty, no DQ playgrounds that the women's division often offers its fans from time to time. And AJ reinforcing that despite her in-ring work coming back from Japan, didn't really hold up to the hype that they were giving it. Her wheelhouse is still, oddly enough, this genre of wrestling. Excellent creative main event with the belt on the line. Round of applause. Brava, ladies. Brava.
Mm-hmm. It was very good. It was very good. Completely. I thought that this match was the best of the three by far.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I honestly, I think, there's a murderer's row of great AEW women's hardcore matches now. Like none of them miss. They never
No,
miss. Like even the
no.
worst ones are good matches. I still think this is in the top half.
Oh yeah, it was very
I think,
good.
so
I
I would, I would pat all those ladies on the back,
mm-hmm.
metaphorically speaking.
Yep. All right, and that's gonna
But
lead
yeah,
us to our call it in the ring segment.
yeah,
All
we're
right.
gonna call this one in the ring now. All right. So calling in the ring this week. It was difficult to come up with a concept for this week. I gotta say, uh, I got to about Wednesday and Thursday or so, and I still had nothing. Last week took a lot out of me for whatever reason. I'm not really sure why. Wink. So, uh, but yeah, I, I went back and I looked at in my memory banks, like, man, I haven't been to an indie show in a very long time. Having kids doesn't really lend itself to going to too many things, actually, especially when your wife works second shift. Um, my parents are, getting older and I have two kids now. And, one of them is two, which is a handful in and of itself. You add her brother who's six on top of that, and it's just a lot. So I try not to ask them to watch them too late into the night too often. Just for their sake, really. Uh, so I haven't been, and then before that, there was the pandemic that locked everything down for the most part. So I haven't been to an indie show in years, but I used to go all the time. We have Excite Wrestling here in the Southern Tier of New York State. Before that, was 2CW, Squared Circle Wrestling, which was, probably the best independent promotion that I've ever attended a show, with the exception of Ring of Honor during not really as glory days, but I did go to a Ring of Honor, a couple of Ring of Honor shows in 2007, and one of the Hammerstein Ballroom in 2009 or not 2013, which was great. But yeah, I got to see them in 2011 in the weekend leading up to WrestleMania 27 at I can't remember what it's called, but it was at the sound station where they filmed WCW Saturday Night.
Mm.
So it was really, really special. But I'm thinking, you know what? I've been to a lot of indie shows, but most of them didn't have nice or historic venues like that.
Mm.
Most venues that host indie shows are decidedly less prestigious than that. And I had feeling that Aaron, being in the business, you've not only attended, but you've probably worked more shows than I've attended. So between the two of us, I'm sure you and I have been in some really, really shady venues to watch wrestling. So I think it might be fun to kind of share some stories about some of the oh what did Vince McMahon once call them uh bingo halls and uh smoke filled parlors and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like his tone aside and his rewriting of history aside, yeah, I mean, there are those venues. So I figured, why don't we commiserate about some of our experiences in such venues?
Right.
I think the weirdest venue I've ever seen a wrestling show at was a bowling alley. It was, they had hardly any room for it, too. I was in college, and one of my friends took me out for my birthday. It was like some NWA affiliate, some small NWA affiliate out uh, in Western New York. It wasn't in Buffalo proper, but it was close by, and it was the show was it wasn't good. I don't think I recognized a single name. To this day, I don't think there was anybody notable on that card that ever made it anywhere. But it was indie wrestling. It was my first indie wrestling show as an adult. Like I'd been to a couple. Like there were there were a couple of Ilio DiPaolo memorial shows that I went to with my dad. It had mostly WCW talent, but it was technically an independent show. It was a memorial show. So, but this was like my first like real experience on my own without parents or anything like that. And it was something like the crowd there, like, there was still bowling going on in the back. Like you could hear sometimes the bowling was louder than what was happening in the ring and the crowd reactions. Like it was so weird. I know it was the weirdest thing. Like, why would you even do this? Like, but I mean, none of the talents really stood out. Unfortunately, it was a lot of basic stuff, but nothing super memorable except that it was my first like indie show as an adult. It was in a freaking bowling alley where half the audience wasn't paying attention. Like they tried to do some stuff like on the outside, tried to get the crowd involved, but like half the people there were too concerned with getting drunk cheap because again, bowling alley.
Mm.
Uh like it was I felt, looking back on that, man, I feel so bad for those wrestlers because of the environment that they found themselves in. Like nobody was really engaged. I tried to be as engaged as I could, but like it's kind of hard to when there's so many loud distractions given the actual location. Like that's just inherent to the location. So
Mm.
like I think that's probably the weirdest location I've ever been to a wrestling show.
Man, weird ones for me. Dime a dozen really, but the weirdest one was in a Pizza Hut parking lot. Okay, so we had a wildfire here. This was this year.
Oh, was it
Yeah,
recent?
it's this year, this recent. So we had a wildfire here this year, and we kind of set up this promotion in my hometown about 20 miles outside of where the center of this wildfire was. Set up kind of off the cuff charity show. Now, it was supposed to be their regular monthly show, and that we kind of pivoted and turned into a charity show. But this was also the first month that they were kicked out of their regular venue. So we were looking like off the cuff for someplace to go. And I guess the owner found, he went to Pizza Hut and they were like, yeah, you can just do it in our parking lot. So in the middle of August
Ooh,
in
ooh, in
Texas,
Texas.
on a blacktop
Oh,
parking lot, we have this show and we set up seats all the way around the ring, but it was so hot outside that like the only crowd that was sitting near the ring were sitting under the overhang of the Pizza Hut on the sidewalk, and
I'm
everybody
getting
else was
dehydrated just thinking about
yeah,
this.
everybody else
Ooh.
was parked in their cars around the ring and in the grass and everything, just like sitting in their cars. And instead of cheering and shit, they would honk. So that was weird. Um,
Drive-in wrestling.
yeah, to make it even weirder, we had like a charity battle royal, uh, and I went over. So
Yeah.
I was outside the basically the thing was I was outside the
Oh,
ring
you
repping the
showed me
battle
that clip.
royal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I
Yeah,
jump
you
in
showed me
after the guy wins, quote unquote, and I shit can him and I win. So I'm 1-0 in wrestling, and I won a
that.
battle royal
As the
uh,
referee.
as a referee. But it was at a Pizza Hut parking lot for a charity show that almost no one attended. I think we maybe raised. I think Pizza Hut probably spend more money feeding us for free because they did, to their credit. But I think they spent more money feeding us than we actually raised at that show, just because it was so like off the cuff. It was happening very quickly. We barely had any of the wrestlers we normally have. We were running matches where guys were, on their second or third match of the night because we just didn't have the depth of roster, and
Right.
it was hot as all hell and just bad. I mean, it's not the hottest show I've been to though, and we'll get to that one.
Ooh.
But the weirdest venue I've ever worked or been to a show at is a Pizza Hut parking lot in August.
Ugh, that sounds oppressive.
It was oppressive.
But at least you went over
Yeah, I
by
mean I can't
you
complain. I
went
went over.
over by not going over the top rope.
Not sure at
Obligatory
40
dad
I want to
joke.
take that bump.
Wow.
So yeah.
I just need to get an obligatory dad joke in there so that my
Ha
friends
ha
groan when they listen to this episode. Hi guys.
ha. Ah.
Um, I I've seen you know most of the indie shows I've seen have been in Legion halls. There was one point where uh, Excite did a show though in a different Legion hall than they normally did. It wasn't they eventually the Legion hall that they normally would run in eventually would decide that they didn't want to hold wrestling anymore.
Mhm.
But this was still before that. They just had a conflict on the date, so they had to hurry up and do a different Legion hall across town, and it was such a different building. Like the normal one, it was super duper high ceilings. You could pretty much whatever you wanted. Everybody was used to the layout. This one, the ceilings were so low that the ring wasn't even like elevated. It was like just like there was a platform that they put it on that was part of like the setup or whatever. But like it was the ring was flat. Like I've never been seated to watch a wrestling match where I was that close and on like the same level as the mat. Like
Mhm.
it was very strange not looking up or out, you know? It was very odd. The wrestlers could get really, really close, which was kind of nice. But like the ceilings were so low that like anybody trying to do anything high flying was really, 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 really putting them and anybody else at risk.
Yeah.
So it wasn't as good a show as it could have been if it had been in the normal venue. But like that was pretty weird too. But like I've never been close enough to the action where like I could see individual beads of sweat on a guy while they were in the ring and I was seated 5 seats back. If I heard
Oh
that,
wow.
like it was really strange. Um, I don't know. It was that I'm glad they never really ran a show there again because it was kind of neat, but it's also like, ugh, I just miss my old venue.
Right.
Where there's more room to breathe and like there was more seating in the other venue too, in the original venue too. Like
Mhm.
it was far more comfortable, even for the wrestlers setting up their merch table. Like it was during the intermissions at the first Legion Hall where they did most of their stuff. It would be just like right by the ring, like right along the wall there. Like they didn't have to go very far. This, because of the layout of it, you had to actually go out into the hallway, which was about 10 degrees cooler than it was in the actual hall that the ring was in. And this was in the wintertime too. Like wintertime in upstate New York is no joke. Like it sucks. Being in a cold hallway is not where you want to be. It's not.
Yeah.
Like, even if it's like at like 58 instead of 68 in the winter, you will feel, especially when that hallway is connected to the door to the outside and the wind rushes in. It's just, it gets right. You don't want to stand in those lines for merch. Like you start to wonder about making the decisions. Like, do I really want this shirt this badly? Like, like, and there were people who left the line and made that decision. Like, nope, nope, this isn't worth it. Like me, I had, I my this was before we knew about him. My buddy George, who wasn't there at the show this time, and this was before we knew about him. He was trained by Drew Gulak.
Okay.
And Gulak was on the show, and I was like, oh, I want to support George and his trainer. And so like I had made the decision to stay in line. And we even did we even shared inside jokes about George and stuff while we were at his table and stuff. I bought a Catch Point t-shirt, but basically more to support George and his aspirations than Drew himself, if that makes any difference. But so I made that commitment because of my friend, but I didn't really blame anybody who wanted to get out of that line. But
man.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad they didn't go back to that venue. Let's just say that.
Okay, well, my next one, I've got two more. I got a third
Me
one
too.
that's kind of important. But this one, okay, so I live in Texas. I live in the panhandle of Texas. I actually live in Amarillo, Texas. Now, one thing that is across the board true about Amarillo, Texas is that we have an extensive Hispanic population here and in the surrounding areas. We're farmland, so of course, but we have I'll put it this way. All right. I have shows like wrestling shows or concerts at venues that hold 5,000 people, and I'll get 2,500, 3,000 people in there. If a Tejano band of any stature enters that building, it's a 5,000 seat sellout, period. If a lucha show, which is where we're going with this, comes to town, they'll put 1,500 people in a building that doesn't need 1,500 people in it.
Yeah.
So around 97 or 98, I believe, it was CMLL or AAA. My memory is terrible, guys. Okay. Especially post military, it's a lot worse. So I'm just trying to get this was only a few parts of this show are super memorable to me. So remembering the whole thing as a vibe is a little difficult. But around 98 or 99, it was either AAA or CMLL. Somebody was doing a tour and they came to Texas and they did like 6 or 7 stops in Texas. And nobody expected them to come to Amarillo, but they totally came to Amarillo. Unfortunately for that, they did their show at a warehouse that held about, I would say, comfortably for a wrestling show with seats and stuff, probably about 1,000 people. Okay. They put 1,500 people in this motherfucker easily. There might have been 2,000, maybe 2,500 even. There was a lot of people in this place to the point where I was like in the second row, just, okay.
Yeah.
Here's the kicker. All right. 2,500 people in this motherfucker. It was like June in Texas. There was no air conditioning in the building. So I don't blame my fellow wrestling fans for the way they smelled, but you can only imagine how it smelled in there. And I know I was the culprit as well. I was sweating buckets and my deodorant gave up the ghost a long time before I noticed the stunk in there. Okay. But it was bad. Okay. But on the flip side, I mean, that's the first time that I ever live laid eyes on Super Colo or It was the second time I'd seen Juventud Guerrera, and he seemed less fucked up than the first time I saw him. So it was actually a good match.
If those
Uh,
guys were in it, was probably AAA
it might have been.
because WCW had that working relationship with AAA through
Yeah.
Conan.
So we had a few guys there that I remember. Pero Aguayo Jr. before he passed away was wrestling at that show. I was super sad when that happened because I'd only seen him one time in my life before that happened, and he was fantastic.
Yeah, I only
So
really know him by reputation. I know that in doing our PWI tournament a couple of weeks ago, his name appeared in the top 10 at least one year.
mhm.
I want to say 2006 or seven or somewhere in
Yeah.
that era.
So
But
I mean,
I've never actually seen any of his work. I just know that he's highly regarded.
well, the show was great. The guys were it was so hot in there, dude. The guys were sweating so bad their tights were doing the discoloration from the sweat. Like it that was bad. The venue itself it was a warehouse in kind of a shadier part of town, so super shady. But yeah, the big thing was whoever
But
the
not
promoter
shady
was.
enough, right?
Yeah, I guess not because the promoter, whoever it was, oversold the place by at least 1,000 seats or 500 seats, and there was no AC, and he knew that. I'm going in, I'm pretty sure. So
Carney's gonna Carney.
Carney's going to Carney, but yeah, that was. I mean, the next one is a little different, but that yeah, shady venue number two, this warehouse, random warehouse in the middle of Amarillo with no air conditioning, which I'm
Oof.
sure doesn't actually exist anymore. I think they may have gentrified that part of town now and made it like a part of downtown or something like that. But I don't think the warehouse is there anymore. I'd have to drive by and see.
Uh, wow.
Yeah,
Ugh.
and it stunk, boy. Oh God,
I feel so bad for everybody in that situation.
dude, nobody was safe, dude. There were people like there was a lady next. Like I mean, I speak enough
Dropping like
Spanish.
flies.
Yeah, I speak enough Spanish. There was this abuelita next to me, little old grandma lady next to me who was super into the matches, but she kept turning to me and going, "Honey, it stinks in here. If I didn't love these wrestlers, I
Yeah.
would leave." You know,
Oh,
like she was just like, "Oh God, it's
oh,
so bad."
abuelita.
Oh, poor abuelita,
Oh,
you know, like, and she's
oh, I
shorter, so
already love her.
she's like
She's
at
from
everybody's
1999.
armpit level, man. And she's just, I know she's getting the worst of it, but she's trucking and like rooting for the matches and stuff. But man, it
you can't
probably
be you can't be the toughness of a Mexican grandma.
no, heck no, heck no. I was horrified by the whole situation, and it was hotter in there by a lot than it was at that parking lot show.
Oof.
It was bad.
Yikes. Well, that's horrible.
It gets worse.
My next one isn't really horrible. It's just weird. It wouldn't be the last time, but it would be the first time that I'd ever seen a wrestling show in a mall.
Don't you love
My
them?
friends and I, uh, it was a 2CW show, and it was the second uh, match that they put on between Team 3D, because it couldn't be the Dudley Boys, and a pre-Bullet Club Young Bucks.
Oh
It was
wow.
like they were just forming Bullet Club at this point. So
Oh wow.
it wasn't the phenomenon that it would become. It was on the rise, but it was Bullet Club they weren't original members, but they were pretty close to the beginning
Hmm.
there. And so this was the Dudleys had won the first one, and this was the rematch. And it's like, oh, we gotta see it. So
Right.
we drove an hour. I think it was to Horseheads. Yeah, the Arnott Mall. I'm pretty sure. So we drove an hour from home to see this, and we're not like super familiar with the mall. We've been there like a couple of times each individually, but we weren't really sure where we were going. We drove around the mall parking lot a little bit, like where are we supposed to park? Like it was so strange because most of the rest of the mall was closed down at this point because it's a wrestling show. It takes place at night, so like all the shops, it's like 8 o'clock at night, and they're all like closing down, and so the mall itself is a ghost town, except for whatever space. I can't even remember what store or whatever it was, but whatever space that they put this ring up in was rocking. The people were there for that match in particular. This was also where I first saw the world's cutest tag team for the first time.
Hell
Candice
yeah.
LeRae and Joey Ryan before we discovered he was a,
Before Joey Ryan,
a,
yep.
a weirdo. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, like, but it was a great show. top to bottom. Really glad I went. But yeah, it was in a mall. And it was like I said, it was a ghost town except for this one ring, this area where they packed several hundred people in there like sardines to watch the Dudley Boys face the Young Bucks and again not put them over. Like it was like you want to know why the Young Bucks have a chip on their shoulder? It's because of crap like this. Like that's probably why. It's like, oh, you want to go too? So you're not even going to put us over in the beginning? Like we're like 15 years younger than you are. We're the future of this business. You're old heads. Like you don't lose anything by losing. You're
Mhm.
still the Dudley Boys. We're trying to create a like so selfish, so selfish. I don't know. To be fair, I don't know whose decision that was. I don't know if it was the Booker. I don't know if Bubba and Devon, probably not Devon, but knowing the ego on Bubba, I don't know if he pressed the the issue or whatever. But like the Bucks should have gone over in the second one. They
Mhm.
should have. Like I I point to things, not necessarily that one, but two things like that. Those experiences are why I give the Young Bucks a lot more slack than certain other people, is because I've seen it with my own eyes where they've been screwed over by the old boys club.
Mhm.
You know, it's like no wonder they had to make their own way. Like no wonder they had to think outside the box, because despite their obvious talent, the fact that they were getting over with fans, nobody wanted to do business. Like at that point in time in the industry with them. So like, yeah, I don't blame them for making their gimmick basically ripping off the best acts of the '90s and flaunting it in your face. I don't blame them for going over in Japan for doing BTE. I don't blame them for starting their own wrestling company and saying screw you to the WWE, who never wanted them in the first place until they already got some buzz that they were
Mhm.
just going to mow over when they rebranded them anyway.
Yeah.
Like I don't blame them. I give them a lot more slack because of that show in particular. Show me that's like, man, that shouldn't have happened.
Mhm.
That really shouldn't have happened. How often is this happening to these guys and other guys like this? Like, so it was a weird venue and kind of a an eye opening night for me as a fan, as a Smart Mark fan.
All right. Well, now, like we mentioned earlier, I'm in the business, so I've probably worked a shitload more shows or been to a shitload more crazy venues. So just a couple of honorable mentions that have notable
Okay.
things about them. One, a bar that I used to have music shows at called the Rec Room had a company called Nightmare Pro. The bar is in a really seedy part of town, like Super Gangville.
Yeah.
I used to have my shows there because it was $300 to rent the whole venue. Um,
Oh,
but and they had a really nice stage and the best sound man in the city. Period. Okay, and he owned the venue, so I
sounds like a
like the
good
guy.
deal.
Good spot, good deal for music shows. For wrestling shows, kind of different. I think beer was cheaper or something. But anyway, the notable thing about it was that Mosh Pit Mike, one half of the JCW Tag Team Champions, threw beer bottles at the crowd and got himself and the company banned from the building. Yeah. Um, then and I also saw him legitimately whoop another wrestler's ass for going off the top rope and landing like with a crutch and landing in between Mosh Pit's legs and hitting him right in the nuts. And he legitimately no sold it, got up off the thing, said, "You son of a bitch," grabbed him by his mask, picked him up off his feet, and started punching him in the face. So honorable
So
mention
much
number
for
one.
professional wrestling.
Yeah, so much for professional. That was the least professional show I'd ever been involved in. So anyway,
Boy, do I have a show to tell you about.
second honorable mention, also a mall, where the promoter or whoever was in the mall working with the promoter thought wrestling ring meant 40s boxing ring. And so our wrestling ring was a wooden platform with four wooden posts and loose actual ropes. It looked like
Oh
a 40s boxing.
no.
The guys went out there and worked their ass off to their credit and they bumped the fuck out of that wooden platform, but it was the worst show I've ever been part of, bar none.
Oh.
No one was there for the show. No one.
Oh,
Okay. The mall was
that's the
promoting it and
worst
no one gave
part.
a shit, but that ring was the worst. Um,
Oh,
so
to work on that in that environment to
I
no
took a ref
fans
bump on
too,
that. Fuck
that
that.
sucks.
It was
That
terrible.
sucks because you're doing unnecessary damage to yourself because nobody's there.
And nobody's there. I mean, the company got paid good by the mall to do the show, but it was a fucking shit show from point A to point B.
God, sounds like
So
it.
honorable mentions out of the way. I am now
Dishonorable
go yeah,
mentions.
dishonorable mentions. I am now going to drop a story I have never told in public, and the only people who know about this are the people who were there, and maybe my wife. I think I might have told her this one,
You
and my
hear that?
brother.
World exclusive.
World exclusive. Okay, so back in 2000, I was just getting into the business. I was greener than squirrel shit. Um, I took a very long, like I went to the military after this, and I took a very long hiatus between that point, and I had a family, and then I went back to wrestling. But when I first started, my buddy Chris decided he wanted to be a pro wrestler because he thought pro wrestling was cool. So he found a wrestling school in Amarillo, and he came over here and he started training. He paid his $1,600, right? And he came over here to pay to do wrestling. The reason it was $1,600 was because the guy who owned the wrestling school and the sole trainer at the school was Chris Romero, aka Chris Youngblood, former
Okay.
WCW tag team champion. His
Yep.
family is super thick out here. Old man Rapid
Yeah.
Ricky Romero is a legendary guy from the 60s.
He's well respected.
I'm pretty sure Rocky Romero is one of these Romeros, but I'm not sure. I've never met Rocky, unless I have, and that's actually Little Rick, but I'm not sure because the body style between the two of them when I knew Little Rick and what Rocky is now is like a Gunther level change.
I'm gonna
Okay,
look that
so
up.
Rocky might be Ricky. I'm not sure, but if it is, I've met him and worked with him actually. So anyway, I got involved because Chris was the only guy training. No, not the same guy. I didn't think so. Anyway, Chris was the only guy training at the school at the time. And so he needed a guy to bump for him and stuff like that. So I got to come for free and I learned how to move around the ring as a wrestler and how to take bumps. I didn't really learn any offense because my whole point there was to assist my friend Chris in learning offense. So I got to go for free and I got to go to their shows and stuff for free. And I eventually got to a point where Chris and I liked each other, Romero and I, and I ended up working at his shows. And so I was working security, greener than squirrel shit, and we go to this place called the Gamboa Ballroom here in Amarillo, a place that still stands to this day and still has events. Now, out from the outside, it looks like a normal Tejano bar. Once you get inside, though, it has this very confined cube building with a stage at one end that kind of extends off the cube. And it has like a little like runway off the stage. And at the end of that runway is where we set the ring up. But around that is a flat piece of floor that would maybe hold 50 people standing, and then stadium seating all the way up to the roof of the bar. So it's like a little gladiator arena. Super
Okay. I
cool.
mean, that kind
Okay.
of sounds cool,
It is
really.
okay. So the venue itself is actually pretty cool. And a couple of things that happened while I was there, like the first time I ever met a legitimate luchador who kept their mask on from the time they were there until they left was was at this show. I met this guy. I also met Cedric of Hollywood, who I think went on to be an ROH later, but he was the very first time I knew an indie guy could be super huge because he had a theme song by Pantera and he was wrestling in a like 100-seat venue in Amarillo. But I think he was on ROH later. He might have been on WWE some, not as like a main character or anything, but his
What's the
name was
dude's name?
Cedric of
Cedric of
Hollywood.
Hollywood.
Cedric of Hollywood. So I met that guy. I met the legitimate first luchador I'd ever met. And I'm there with Chris Romero and his trainee, my buddy Chris, and um, we're at this show. And he's like, "Hey, Aaron, one of my security guys didn't show up tonight, so after you help set up the ring, I need you to work security for me." And I'm like, "Okay, cool, no problem. I'm already in my blacks because I'm helping set up the ring, so I'm part of the crew, so I wear black, 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 because theater kid."
Yep. Yep. Yep.
So, and that's the same uniform for the security guys. So I'm like, "Okay, cool, I'll do security, no problem." All right. Matches are going, everything's cool. This bar is serving up the dollar beers, so everybody's getting fucking hammered. It's mostly a lucha show with Chris Romero promoting it, so it's big here in Amarillo. There's a lot of Hispanic and indie wrestling fans just kind of packed into this place, probably more than the 100 that should be in there. I really didn't pay attention to how big the crowd was, just what was happening in front of me as a security guy, because everybody's getting hammered and this venue's little. Like it wouldn't take much for a guy to get from the front row to the ring. Like there wasn't that much
Yeah.
space. So I'm standing there. There's a guy there. He's been in front of me the whole night. It's no big deal. I was standing there before he sat down. He's been drinking a lot. I noticed he's been drinking a lot. He's kind of a small guy, so I know he's probably tipsy. And
Yeah.
he's yelling and just rooting for the matches. Everything's fine. It's normal, right? Like everything's cool.
Right.
Then the luchador guy that I met goes in for his match with Cedric of Hollywood, and Cedric goes over. And this is I don't know how to say still real to me, damn it, in Spanish, but this is one of these moments. Okay. This guy is pissed that this luchador went, had to put over Cedric. And he is trying to come over the rail. So I arm grab, classic, one arm him up under his underarms, and I put him back in his place. Mira, stay there, bro. Okay. Don't move. No va. Okay. And he's like, and I don't think he speaks very much English. So he's trying to communicate something back to me, but I'm not understanding because it's loud in there. And then the next match is starting to start, and I turn my back to make sure nobody's, fucking with anybody behind me, turn back around, and he's got a knife in his hand. And I'm like, oh, hell. I mean, I had not been to the military yet. I knew some martial arts, and I'm green as squirrel shit in the wrestling business. I was not even aware that this was a possibility. Okay.
Yeah,
at this point, in 1998, this is a work, guys. Come on. It was way like in the 80s, maybe, but now, no.
Yeah.
So
this isn't Memphis in 1975.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So I'm sitting there and I'm like, I don't know what to do. And before the guy can make a move on me, apparently I'm not the only one watching this guy. And I have a guardian angel, and his name is Chris Romero. Because Chris Romero, all 260 something pounds of him, comes across that venue faster than I've ever seen anybody move and tackles this guy clean off his feet. Just, whoo. I mean, all I saw was a blur of Chris Romero in front of me, in between me and the knife guy. The knife is suddenly on the ground, which I didn't pick up and fold up and put in my pocket.
Yeah.
And the guy's on the ground with Chris, and they're yelling at each other in Spanish. And I don't know what they're saying because it's too fast and everything's too loud. I'm not that fluent. So I hear they're yelling at each other, but Chris, hey, did you get the knife? Yes, I have it. Okay, get him out of here. So the other security guard, this fairly sizable black, I don't think he would have done this to the other guy. But the fairly sizable black fellow, that's the other security guard with me, he comes over, we get this guy out of it, and you kind of throw him out, and I don't give him his knife back.
DJ Jazzy Jeff style.
Yeah, straight up, dude. Yeah. Straight up. Back of the neck and back of the pants, and he was out.
Yep.
But I gave the knife to Chris because I didn't know what to do with it, and Chris was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry that happened." I'm like, "Dude, no, you saved my life." Like, why am I?
Holy cow!
So yeah, shady ass venue. The only time in my entire wrestling career, beyond making a bad call in a wrestling match that almost got my ass beat by a wrestler, the only time I've ever had my life threatened in the wrestling business, legitimately threatened. There are fights that happen in this business. There are backstage is like any other business. There are people you don't like, and because it's wrestling and it is we're pantomiming at a combat sport. It is a heated combat environment, and fights happen back there. Okay, it's just the truth. And I'm not saying I condone it, but it is the truth. But it's the only. But that said, that's the only time I've ever felt that my life was truly in danger in wrestling. And the person who hired me handled that himself. So super RIP Chris, I will love you forever. I'll never say a bad word about you. But that's the only time. And that makes it the shadiest venue I have ever been in. Despite the cool layout and the cool people I met. And actually what was really an awesome wrestling show, I almost got stabbed because somebody was mad about a finish.
It was still real to them, damn it.
These days, he better pray that shit was made of chocolate. But then, no, that was a whole different Aaron. That was a pacifist debater theater kid, Aaron, who was doing wrestling because it was cool and not because I had any desire to be part of a combat sport or anything like that. So yeah, I mean, that was before Ref Aaron. That I wasn't even really technically training to be a wrestler. I was just like a motorbike. yeah, like a motorcycle gang has hang-arounds. I was just a hang-around, but I helped my friend Chris learn how to wrestle and bump, and he's fantastic. I really wish he would have kept doing it. He'd be in WWE or AEW right now for sure if he had kept doing that stuff. But like me, he also had a family and took a long break and decided not to go back to it when he had the opportunity. Where I did go back and eventually, kept working. But Chris Romero, man, fucking like I said, I'll never say a bad word about him. There's some things I know about him that even the Dark Side of the Ring producers have been interested in, which I might tell another day. But I won't ever say that he was a bad person or an asshole or anything like that because he did save my life once, and I owe him big for that. And I'm really sorry that I couldn't return the favor at some point before he passed away.
Wow, that's nuts.
Dude,
That
yeah.
story's
Yeah,
nuts.
I've never told that to a lot of people. Like
Like
my
I've been to
brother
crazy
heard that
shows, but
story.
I've never had my life on the line.
Yeah, man. I mean, still real to him, damn it. I guess I laugh about it now. It was not funny in the moment, though.
No.
I was
Well,
just like,
no. You can
I don't
laugh
know what
about
to
nearly
do.
anything 20 years
Oh
after the
yeah,
fact, but
it's 24 years later. I'm definitely
yeah.
laughing about it now because I'm alive. But
Yeah.
then I was definitely not laughing. It definitely some trauma responses definitely came with that situation. I definitely didn't come
Yeah.
back and work any shows for a little while. And the next one I did was with Doink the Clown. uh, and Jake the Snake Roberts and Juventud Guerrera in the depths of all their addictions. And it was a shit show from front to back. And I'll tell that story on this show one day too. So stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna have a
All right.
wrestling stories with Aaron segment one day. I feel like
Yes. I think that should be a recurring thing.
maybe because as we do this podcast, I'm remembering more and more cool stuff.
Yeah.
But we have
Yeah,
less
we
than a
gotta cut
minute,
it off.
so
Yeah.
we're gonna cut it off. But thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you next week.